Someone stand by. You might see Chiefs come out.
Should be good. Can someone online confirm if you can hear us? Nathan says yes.
Good morning. So I'm gonna call the meeting to order because it's 10:01 in Madison, Georgia. And I think the first thing to do is establish a quorum. So can we do that?
Yep. So Courtney, Lee, is Scott Stevens online? It's behind today. Okay, he may be joining us later. Jeff Adams.
Here.
Pete Quinones.
Here.
Oh, he's online. Scott Roberts is here. Dwayne Montgomery is here. Alan Owens is here. Huey, Terry, Jim Atkins. Don't believe he is here. So we have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. So the minutes were sent out from the January 11th meeting electronically. And what I would do is entertain a motion to either approve or amend those minutes.
Motion approved.
The motion to approve from Scott. Second from Jeff. Any other discussion? All in favor of the aye? Aye. Any opposition, same sign? Yes, it's been approved.
Courtney, quick question.
Yes, sir.
I know Jim's role changed, he rolled off the commission and he was gonna stay and work on the project. Was specifically about the hospital designation and the traffic wayfinding, correct? Right. So does he count as far as membership towards,
Yeah.
for the committee? So he's on the committee?
He's on the
Okay,
committee.
all right.
He's a full member.
Okay.
He had talked to Dr. Ashley and Dr. Ashley talked to me and,
I mean, we've never had a long meeting quorum. I just didn't know for meeting quorum, that's it.
but Jim, what Jim was doing, I thought was very valuable. And I was tickled to death with him, well, not to death, but I was pleased with him doing it. So he's offered to stay on. And so we hope to continue that project. Any other questions about that? GTC update. Do we have an update? For y'all's information, Liz is in Orlando at the Society of Trauma Nurses, I believe is the meeting she's at. I can give you just a little bit of an overview. We are working through the budget process as we speak. Here comes a lady with all the answers. Just look up and see the mufflers and you figure out where we put you. I'm trying to do an update on the trauma commission, so help me as best you can.
Okay.
In the budget process this year, I think we got an extra $4 million as part of the initiative. Dr. Ashley and Liz and Dr. John worked very hard on. They spent a good bit of time in that plan. So that's a little short of the goal, but $4 million is a pretty hefty piece of change. I think I want to say it wasn't the speaker, but it was maybe the lieutenant governor, one of them, in the well said that, we will be working on trauma next year. So that was pretty nifty. We did get us a little bit more money from Super Speeder, a little bit more money from the fireworks excise tax, so that those things will help. There is a thing, and I'll go ahead and talk about it. Senate Bill 515, some of y'all know about it, worked on it. Senate Bill 515 was sponsored by Senator Bo Hatchett out of Gainesville. And the bill essentially would have set up two pilot projects in the state, one in Region 7, I believe, one in Region 2. And it would put ambulances in those districts to figure out how we can. Sorry. Yeah, I didn't know if I had an echo here. But it will put ambulances in those districts to try to study the issue of inter-hospital and direct transportation of trauma patients. So interesting little thing, the money made it in the budget and the budget passed. We initially wanted, I think 4.2, we ended up getting 2.1. So half of the money was approved in the budget. Senate Bill 515, however, didn't pass. I don't think there was any opposition to it, but if y'all ever been up there on the last day or so, there's everybody and their brother pushing to get their bills heard and voted on. And this one just did it like the cut. So to my knowledge, there was no one against it. But it one way or the other. So I actually talked to Chad Black and Senator Hatchett is his senator. Asked him what he knew about it. He said he knew that it didn't pass. Said there's some speculation that the governor may just take the money out of the budget altogether. He can do a line item veto of those dollars. And the other thing is that they may leave it in, and that we work with Senator Hatchett to make sure that the way we spend the money was the way it was intended to do. Again, we do now have a budget, the budget committee. I'm on the budget committee. We are meeting fairly regularly. Katie's trying to keep us straight with some difficulty, but we are meeting regularly, and now that we know what we got, the work will begin in earnest as far as the budget is concerned. The next meeting is the middle of next month at Chateau Long. Encourage y'all to go to the meetings up there. I will not be there. I'll be out of state on those dates. So the first vacation in a while. So, Katie, anything else?
No, we'll meet on Monday. We'll have to have a called meeting to vote on the final 25 budget. So just be on the lookout for those dates because we'll hopefully finalize 25 or work to finalize 25 on Monday. So
I think the work towards finalizing is probably a more correct.
yeah.
The budget, there's a few things there that are unsettled, I'll put it that way. So anyway, and after that, then we'll know exactly what I hope to do today. And I think if you looked at the agenda, the only thing that we're going to vote on today, we just voted on. Today, I hope all the proposals that we want to talk about, some on here, some not, we put on the table for you to think about, discuss, take it back to your groups. And for the next meeting, it may be a call meeting, probably will be, that we will vote on what we want to do with the EMS funding. Is that fair? Okay. Is Mr. Boone available?
I am available. Can you hear me okay?
I'm good, Tim. Good to talk to you. How are you, sir?
Doing fine, thank you. The old age gets at you a little bit here and there, but otherwise, clicking along all right. How about everybody there?
We're here.
Good, all right. So let's start then with the overview of the quarter with the report there. If we can go on to the next page. Support deliverables, there's about 3 pages of them here. Number of things involved, lots of calls and coordination in this last 3 months, and some interesting development of a couple of the county fire agencies looking to see if the Trauma Commission would be interested in helping to provide gateways in their fire apparatus, which are operated by medical first responders, and that we've got some discussion going on about that. No implications that it would work because of the current grant situation, but it's interesting that it's coming out of the woodwork that they're looking for that kind of support, and especially in Atlanta and up in White County. I'm not quite sure what all that means, but I think it means that people are seeing some value in what the AVLS is providing. And you can see the other kinds of things that we're doing, mostly just the ongoing routine kinds of things that we have to do to help out as the agencies with getting the support that they need from our vendors, variety of vendors and such. Next page, thanks.
So hold on just a minute, Tim, on that, you talk about meeting reference Clayton County migration. Are they migrating to our system or are they migrating to another system?
You're talking about the White County and Atlanta that I just mentioned? I'm sorry, I just didn't hear you.
Clayton County.
Clayton County. Clayton County is at the moment moving to another system, and I'm not sure what that is. I know what's going on. I've dug in too deeply with Grady, but I don't know what Clayton's going to end up doing. It's, as far as I know, it's Cradle Point system, but more than that, I don't know.
Okay.
Hey, Tim, can y'all touch just a little bit on the blood box temperature? So I know we had discussion last meeting, we add that to the equipment list, if I'm not mistaken. Is that working as anticipated, or?
So they finally sent me the spec sheet, and I sent that to the blood bank that we're working with to make sure that it's compatible with their system. The next step is to get one in, and we have to pair it with a specific AVLS box. So that's kind of the little tricky point, is we'll have to get a couple in, work with a service directly to ensure then that the blood bank has the oversight that they need. There's a lot of checks that have to go in boxes for their compliance. We've got some other systems that we know work with it, but the price point is dramatically different on those, like $1,500 a unit versus $150. So it's something that we want to make work. The next step was to get it approved from the blood bank, and that happened last week. So
that's a higher quality of temperature probe, is that what that is?
Well, the higher price point operates on a completely autonomous system. The $150 one works with the current AVLS system so that we don't incur the additional like connectivity costs and things like that are associated with it. And so kind of use what y'all already pay for to support ongoing projects was the thought.
As y'all get that figured out, bring that back to the group.
Absolutely.
So that we can push that out to other folks who might benefit from that knowledge.
Do you think it has the potential that, I mean, it sounds like you have to pair it to a device or connect it. Is there the potential that you could use that same device in multiple vehicles and it be paired or partnered, whatever term they use?
So that might be a Tim question, but I believe as long as there's an AVLS system there and it has previously been paired with it, that we could take it from supervisor QRV to med unit, and it remains operable. For the blood bank, they just have to be able, even if they don't see real time, like we go out into a dead zone, as long as all of that data backfills and there's not a lag on it, then they're happy with that. That's my
The
understanding.
ones we were using were in a drug box. So if the box went from one truck to another, it would simply interconnect.
Right.
For
And that's the
And
goal.
hopefully that's the way this will work too, so good.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Next page there, but you see just more of the same sort of thing in terms of coordination of troubleshooting and SIMs and gateways. One thing that has happened significantly is that, as you'll see when we look at it a little bit later, we're continuing a significant shift to Southern Link coverage in the areas where they have a good footprint. People are moving strongly in that direction. It's over half our units now, but it works, seems to be working quite well in doing that. Next page.
Nope. Kyle Gibson, RTAC 2 and 10 provide AVLS coverage list. Tell me about that one.
It just simply was a request that came in that Kyle asked for lists of all of those. He's doing some double checking and coordinating, working alongside of us. The RTACs work with have been very helpful to me in reaching out and keeping track of what's going on out there, especially in the smaller agencies that I don't have really good visibility into. But
Well,
it's just one of.
It wasn't a criticism. I'm just trying to figure out, because I'm working on another project that we're trying to figure out who's on first. And it is kind of like that old Abbott Costello thing. It's just about as much fun. So tell me what you're doing there.
So all I was doing in that particular case is providing him information. And this is exactly why it's on the list, so that you would know what's going on. So, and I don't know any more specifics about it than that. But if that's of interest to you, I can get back with Kyle and find out more about it and get the information.
It's very much interesting to me based on, and I'll talk about this other project in a few minutes, but it opens some ideas that we might be able to use this data to help answer some other questions.
Okay. I will get back with Kyle and find out what I can and get you connected or get the information for you. Okay? There you see the rest of them. Those are all different things. And working with different counties. And as we look down then at the next page, you see what our usage rate is across the board, about 89%, which is pretty good usage over the last quarter. And most of the agencies, or most of the regions doing well. Region 7, we still have some challenges there. That number looks horrible, but when you look at the number of actual units that are in Region 7, it only takes one unit being down makes a big difference. And of course, that makes a big difference in terms of the availability of care that's available in the geography. But we've got basically two counties that are there that are having trouble getting their units up. And so we're trying to work with them. And Brian and I have both been sort of looking into that and over their shoulder and trying to help them without being a pain in the butt, because they're obviously small agencies and have plenty to do. But any help with that, I certainly wouldn't turn it down. If anybody knows those people and can help find out more about what they need. I have a problem with some of the small agencies, frankly, that sometimes don't get responses to emails. Sometimes it's because personnel have changed and emails have changed. And the other thing is that voicemails are full and they can't leave a voicemail. So it's hard to stay on top of them on a timely basis. And that's not just Region 7, by the way. It's just the nature of small agencies in some cases. Not all of them, but some of them. Any questions or comments on that slide? Anything else?
Tim, is Grady basically going to exit it completely?
Well, Grady has got this Samsara system that they have to have for some reason for their dash cams, and that provides Wi-Fi capability and everything that they need. And so, and of course, they've been paying most of their own way after the first year or so of the implementation of AVLS. They've been buying their own equipment and paying their own airtime, most of their own airtime. And so they're saying, we don't want to duplicate this. Now, they are keeping the MG90s on our system in their mobile stroke units because they've got double coverage in those and so on. But in the others, they're using the Samsara. And we've been talking with both Samsara and Sierra Wireless about getting GPS feed into our AMM so that they would be visible in the SOC, but those companies and their proprietary networks, Samsara is willing to send it. Sierra Wireless isn't so necessarily ready to accept it, but those conversations are going on as we speak. That's a strategic business issue for companies like Sierra Wireless. Okay. So not a big change here. Chattahoochee, we're gonna get them on. We just keep chipping away. You see the ones that we don't have. That gives us a status visually. Then the next page. Here's what our airtime situation is with where we're paying for airtime. We've got about 346 units on Verizon. AT&T 168 is pretty stable, not too many going there. We've got once in a while we get a unit or two moved to AT&T because they've got a particularly good coverage in some area, but there doesn't seem to be any great attraction to FirstNet over anybody else at this point. T-Mobile is sitting at about 80 units now, and interestingly enough, they have a proposal that they would like to make to the committee, that is basically, their price is about $10 per month per unit less than all the others. And they've been adding cell sites, and they've got maybe the most robust network in Georgia. It's debatable right now, but it's close. They've been adding towers all over the state. And they're willing to, if the commission were to, excuse me, the commission were to really encourage agencies to test T-Mobile and to give it a real try in their areas, they'll give not only a lower price, but 2 or 3 months of free coverage as an incentive to do that sort of thing, so that they can do tests at no cost. And at least for the mobile service. Now, the reality is, as I talk to people, especially those with larger fleets and so on, there's an issue of the cost of the time of switching SIMs and pulling trucks in to do that and that sort of thing, which is not unsurmountable. And T-Mobile will actually to send a team to help with that. So it's an interesting possibility. I mean, we could save about 25% off of this what we're paying for airtime, which is a significant amount of money. If we were to shift a couple hundred units even over, it could make, $50,000 a year that could be spent on something else instead of on airtime. So I don't know if what's the level of interest in that with the committee, because it's a variance from the past where we've really left it entirely up to the agencies to make their own decisions about which carrier to use, and we haven't influenced them one way or the other.
Well, I think it needs to be left up to the providers, because they're the ones that know what level of service they're getting in their respective areas. We looked at it a couple of years ago, and the service level just wasn't there. So I would not be supporting mandating that people try to move to it for the sake of saving money, because if they're not getting the level of service they need, we're not gaining anything. Have we communicated with Verizon and AT&T and Southern Link what T-Mobile's offering?
Oh, yes, they're very well aware of it.
Okay. Maybe we can get them to come down a little bit to match and save some money that way. And
Well,
how
go ahead.
Well, no, go ahead and finish that, and I'll ask my second question after you.
Well, okay, I was going to say that it's possible that they may come down in price. They've certainly been coming down on price in their civilian world, competitive pricing, but it depends to a great deal on the Georgia Technology Authority negotiating that contract with them. It's all these prices are all set through that GTA.
Okay, and then my second question would be, I know we just, end of February, we finished up our open enrollment. So if somebody were testing it and want to change, how would that affect changing providers?
Good.
Under the existing thing, they'd have to work within the, I'm sorry?
Go ahead, Tim. I think it was an open mic.
Okay. So they'd have to work within the windows now, and that's what they're currently doing. If somebody, the only reason we've made exception to the windows is when there is an operational need, as you're talking about. If the level of service is just problematic for patient care, then we would go ahead and make the change. But we haven't done. I mean, we just haven't had that come up. Does that answer your question?
It does, and I'll communicate it back to our, the folks in our region and see if anybody's interested and let you know.
And I think that might be if each of you in your region, when you have an opportunity with them, the T-Mobile has continued to improve over the last couple of months or a couple of years. So it's a lot different than it was a couple of years ago. If they're willing to give it a try, it could be worth the money to the commission, to the EMS subcommittee budget. But I agree. I certainly don't push anybody against their operational needs. They're the experts. They know their business. I don't. Okay, next we have the next page, we have our current budget situation. We had 206,000 budgeted for the fiscal year. We're at the end of Q3 and we've got about 135,000 of that left. So you can see we've had like 34 new MG90s. So it gives us, we're tracking pretty much the same as last year in terms of the rate of units that are being added, new units that are being added, and old units that are being replaced. And old units being replaced, I'm talking about units that are out of warranty and they've worn out. We have a few of those because we've been using MG90s all along, but not very many. So there's where we stand on this year's budget. And that's not mine.
That's a Jimson. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments, direction?
Do we have any requests for gateways that have not been met?
Yeah, we have a slide somewhere about requests for next year.
Yeah, I have that under new business for FY 2025.
You gonna hang around for that discussion?
Yes, I'll be here.
Okay, good deal.
And I do have, there are some, by the way, some interesting possibilities technology wise there. We may be about to be able to cut our equipment cost significantly. So we'll talk about that in the budget.
Okay. Any other questions for Tim? Jim's update. Kathy, is that you or is that Kim or is y'all tag teaming?
It should be Kim.
Yeah, that's me, Courtney. Good morning, everybody. Can y'all hear me?
Good morning.
Yeah,
Morning.
I apologize for not being there. I just got power back about 45 minutes ago. So we've had about 7 inches of rain down here. So it's been an interesting night. So in front of you, you have our education report. You'll see all of the classes there, the number of courses that we have budgeted and what we've completed to date. All of those are still in progress. I think we have a few that we've actually completed everything for those line items. Our leadership course kicked off in March. We have 29 students in the class this time. Had a little, actually 66 applicants this year. So the first module of that went good, and we have module 2 planned in Region 1 in Rome coming up the first week of May. We have a total of 25 NAMT courses that have been budgeted, and you see there again the figures on the number of those that have completed, and we do have a number of those still in progress. Our Intro to Leadership program, they've made some significant improvements on that class this time as well. Had some great evaluations from the first class that they did for this fiscal year. So that seems to be getting a lot of attention for those new leaders that are coming into positions new in services. So we're actually excited about that program. Paramedic program, again, another popular program that we continue to get a lot of requests for. You see the numbers there. And I will also give in another slide some updates on the contact hours from each one of these. And I won't go through everything. All of you can read there the number of courses that we've done. One thing that I do want to comment on is the line item that we have on the public service announcements. I have a separate report on that, and I'll come back to that in just a minute. But does anyone have questions about the education report for this quarter? All right, we can go to the next slide. I believe you have the training hours, and these are contact hours to date for each one of the courses that have been completed. You see at this point of our contract this fiscal year, we're at 68,836 contact hours for those courses that have been completed. And again, still a lot of those that are in progress, and we'll be updating that as we move along. One of the things that we are trying to do, we actually have talked to several of the subcommittee members, and I had conversations about some of the information that we're sending out on notification of these courses. Not everyone that attends these courses is a member of the association. So we do utilize other listservs and information to disseminate the advertisement about these classes that are going on. A lot of times we're working with those services that have requested the NAMT courses, working through the region program directors to disseminate information through their listservs, and trying to find new ways to get the information out there. One of the things that we're running into, though, is that a lot of times the information is going to the director or assistant director of a department, sometimes to the field training officers. But what we're understanding is that a lot of that information is still not being disseminated down to other people in the departments that might be interested in that. So I'm working with several people to try to figure out ways to improve our mechanisms for getting information out and getting more of these classes filled up. We have incorporated a new Google Calendar that instead of anyone having to go to our website and actually go to the training tab, we're trying to make it easier for everyone. So we've developed a calendar where all of the training courses that we have that are coming up are listed on that calendar. So you can quickly look at the calendar that will be on our website, and you can see where those classes are and if they're local to you. So hopefully we can get more participation in those courses. At the bottom of this sheet that was sent out to the subcommittee, we wanted to provide some of the feedback that we're getting about these classes. This isn't everything that we have, not every line item is listed here. I know we do have other comments on TECC and some of the NAMT courses, but these are just some of the ones that Kathy pulled out and some of the comments and ratings that we've gotten on the courses so far. So I wanted to bring that to your attention, because we rarely get negative comments. That's, a great thing, but we do take these comments very seriously. And when we find things that are either ways that we can improve the courses, along with the ongoing training that the vetted instructors are going through to put the courses on, we try to incorporate this and try to address these things where we can. So that does give you a little bit of information on some of the feedback from the courses that we're putting on. Any questions about the contact hours or the information about these courses? All right. And I believe next probably go into the report from the public service announcements. So all of you received this. This is an update on basically our current standing with the PSA campaign. And a couple of things that I wanted to bring to your attention is what I would like to do is I would, when we can have time on the agenda to do this, I would like to be able to schedule a session with the ad agency that we're working with to go into a lot of the details of what this report is covering. Because unless you really are into the nuts and bolts of how advertising works and some of the things that we need to put more focus on or maybe direct our attention in some other areas, we're really leaning on them for guidance on that. But we did want to give you an update on exactly what our reach is with the PSA campaign right now. The number of submissions and you can look at that. Some of these we have submissions that actually have interest in more than one region. So you'll see the numbers that are kind of associated with that. And you also see the breakdown of licensed versus non-licensed people that are looking for information. One of the things that we're also trying to work on, we do have a better, I think, situation now. I know Richard had sent an email. I think the GDAC and the information working through the dashboard is a little bit more user-friendly now, and we're still making tweaks to that and trying to work through that process. And in a lot of the cases, we are getting feedback from the region training coordinators as they make contact, as these submissions for the consultation forms are actually submitted. They to close that loop, what we're trying to do is we're trying to work with the field with the region training coordinators to be able to get information back to show that they've made contact with that person to either get them information on a initial education program or a service within whatever region they're interested in. Right now, we're not getting all of that feedback from each training coordinator of the regions, but we're working on trying to make that a better system for how we can show that we're closing that loop and that everyone that has actually submitted a consultation form has had some follow-up and that we're not losing these people in the process. Does anyone have questions about the PSA campaign?
Hey, Kim, this is Huey.
Hey, Huey.
Hey, is there a way, I'm just thinking as I'm looking at this, is there a way to reach out to maybe the career academies or the local high schools through their health occupations and maybe getting this information to them? I don't know if that's something y'all thought about or if it's even a possibility. I don't know how that works, working with school systems and what they allow or don't allow.
Actually, Huey, that is something that's a possibility, and I'm having conversations. I know that Clayton County has done some recent work in the high school with a program that they're working on. I am familiar also with a program that is being done in Lawrence County and some of the things that they're doing there, and I'm having conversations with an instructor there. So anything that we can do, our goal is to get this information to the people that it needs to get to, and that's one of the areas that I feel like that we still have some work to do, because a lot of the information that's sent out from through our listservs and our contact information, we just haven't found that sweet spot yet to get it to the providers or get it to people that it's like the information gets out and it stops at a director or assistant director level. And that comes from, our training side of things. But I know that we are also looking at ways that we get information out there to people that are just interested in the profession. So I think that we do have some potential there to work with those career academies. And like I said, Clayton County is doing something right now. I'm trying to find out a little bit more about that. They just had a program last week, and I'll be following up to see how much we can do to get that information out further.
Okay, yeah, we were successful in the beginning working with 2 of our career academies, but like everything else, the interest kind of waned off to where they only had a handful of students, and it wasn't feasible to continue doing EMT classes for 3 or 4 students. And I'm just trying to figure out a way to get the interest back up, and that seems to be the age group we need to be targeting when they're not really sure what they want to do for a career.
Well, that's also one of the ongoing conversations that we're going to be having with the ad agency and figuring out with them, because there's some areas in here that I know that we have a few gaps that I really need them to explain in a little bit more detail kind of how they're going about this. But that's definitely something that I can talk to them about and figure out how we can expand our reach into those areas.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Judy, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I'm the older generation now, and I'm not really back in the high school area. Do some of y'all that have high school kids, do they still have career days?
Yes. Yeah.
So potential,
Yeah.
if we could reach out to the high schools and if nothing else, have, our video running.
Right.
That's
We
that's
just
just a
did
thought,
that.
because I'm not, like I said, I'm not the high school kids age anymore.
Yeah, like I said, we've always been involved with our local schools, but the interest just seemed to have waned off over the last, I don't know, 6, 7 years, where we used to have a lot of interest from some of the students, and it got to where, again, it just got to be a handful of students, and it wasn't feasible to put on an entire class for a semester, for 5 or 6 students.
I agree. Right now, we've got 84 people that we're testing. We're helping test the people at our school system, next week. But talking to the instructors, the majority of the students are doing that because they think it's a cool class to take. But when you go in there and ask how many people are seeking and fielding this, it's crazy how many people raise their hand that would want more information from me as a provider, from it to them, that they're just taking the class. But very few people that come from that program actually enter the workforce in Fayette County anyway. I do think Clayton County is unique because they bring them in specifically, sounded like for their organization, what they presented, and it works really good for them. But the interest is there, I think, to take the course, but as far as what they're gonna do, past that is low. One thing I like to ask is, next week, we're doing a career fair at Southern Crescent Technical College. And if we could have, if it's okay if we just play the video or whatever I can do, if it's in the format, we can loop it or something and maybe a benefit for that, because I think it's.
Yeah, because I think we've got a couple scheduled coming up too.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. In fact, I already have had some areas that have reached out to me about the video and using that in their career days. So that's something that we are currently providing. So if anyone needs that, we are happy to provide that to you for that use.
And I applaud y'all, Kim, and your marketing campaign for making the changes that they did to change the picture. And, with this, I know it's his first year doing this, and, we'd all like to see where we have just, hundreds or thousands of people wanting this workforce, but, they're up against the same thing we all are, is trying to engage. But I think every method that we can have in engaging people, I think that anybody we get out of this is a success for the first year.
Well, I think one thing for sure, we actually came into this at an advantage because we were going off of some of the information and some of the things that had been done in South Carolina, and utilizing the same ad agency that they were working with. They knew where they didn't meet their target market with that campaign, so they were able to direct us a little bit better. So we weren't having to go through all of those areas of not really hitting the mark because we had their information to go off of. So that helped us. But we do know that there are some gaps that we still have the ability to get information out there and make this better.
Yeah.
I did want to back up to one thing that I didn't cover in my education report, because I wanted to kind of explain. You notice on the EVOC line item, you see that there were 3 courses that were budgeted in this fiscal year for that, and that none of those have been completed yet. I think I had mentioned this at a previous meeting, but I wanted to follow up on it because we do have a little bit of resolution to this now. It's been probably, Kathy can tell you for sure on the exact amount of time, but I think it's probably been somewhere around 8 months at least that we've been working with McNeil and Company to come up with a resolution on the EVOC training. We had great success with what we were doing with EVOC training over the last few years. Had heard back from several services that had implemented Train the Trainer and the cost savings that they had recognized as a result of doing this. But then we got into an issue with the curriculum with McNeil and Company and trying to figure out exactly what it really came down to. Is it appeared more that they wanted to use their instructors and us paid them to do that. And Kathy and Keith and Eddie White are very familiar with this because they are the vetted instructors that had been putting these courses on and the Train the Trainer courses across the state. And from what they went through in getting their certification to be able to do this, we are doing so much more with that curriculum than McNeil and Company was. There was actually, if I remember correct, there was no hands-on, no cone courses. Really, it was just basically lecture and really not much interaction and hands-on activities with the type of training that they were doing. And it appeared that they wanted us to just pay them, and we did not feel comfortable with that because it was not a curriculum and the way they were conducting it that we could stand behind, that we knew that we were doing a much better job of that. It was just a matter of staying on them and explaining to them what we were doing, who our target audience was, and getting them to sign off on us being able to do this. Kathy was very diligent in her efforts with them. It was not something that they were going to do had we not stayed on them, but this has been, like I said, at least an 8-month process of getting them to understand the level of training expertise that our instructors had and what we were trying to do here. And they have now, as I understand it, agreed to let us go forward with that. So we may have to do something on an extension as far as because we're this close to the end of the fiscal year. I'm not sure how many of those courses we can get completed by the end of the fiscal year, but we have at least gotten the hurdles out of the way and are ready to move forward with that training. And Kathy can fill in any of the gaps there if there's other questions about that.
Any questions? Y'all think you got it worked out with these folks?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Hey, Kim, some of the issues where we're kind of a little bit of a different animal than a portion
You
of our
probably
service.
need to come up here, Kathy. I didn't think about that. The
Probably
microphones are up
I mean, I
here.
thought I
So
was loud enough. A portion of our services are fire and EMS, such as Habersham, Fayette, Henry, and those other places. And what we were running into was even we were using what we were told that we could use. And it came back after NFPA made some different rulings, and there's a new OSHA ruling out. And they're even questioning, McNeil is reaching out to us asking, is there any, are we seeing any big differences on the OSHA rulings that are coming out? You know, I tried to explain that our government entities are not really OSHA constricted. Is that a good word?
That's a good
OSHA
word.
constricted. But we do try to follow as much as we can. So when something comes up in the news, we say that we're trying to be as OSHA compliant as we are. But as of right now, they have a contract that they're working through with their legal. They're gonna get it back to us. They're happy with everything that we've provided them. I mean, I sent them pictures of us out there with cone courses and all of us doing this and that, and they're really happy with what we've got going on. So hopefully we'll be able to get out and produce the class for all agencies across the state.
And Courtney, the other thing about that I wanted to follow up on is it was, we knew that it was imperative for us to stay on them and try to get this worked out because of the number of services that we had continuing to contact us about this training. And we were just in limbo and not able to do anything. So we knew that there was a need out there. And that's why, thanks to, again, Kathy's efforts with that we've been able to get this far with it. But we knew it was definitely a needed training.
I have one more thing. When we started the program, we went down into the Region 9 area and we would do a class a year down there. And after the third year we were down there, Tristy came up to us and said they had implemented a program where everybody, including the CEO of Chatham EMS, was going through the class. I mean, everybody. After that, they mitigated $400,000 a year in savings. We thought that was fantastic.
You
Yeah.
need to ask them to send you that letter.
Sir?
Ask them to send you that letter.
Okay, I'll call
And
Tristy.
good. That'd be good on their letterhead.
Thank you.
Trust me.
What were the OSHA changes, Kathy? Can you speak to that?
I was trying to understand exactly what he was talking about because when I start reading OSHA, I start legalese. That's what I start reading. And I'm just a down-home country girl.
There's a lot of OSHA, new OSHA, they're out for public comment now.
Mhm.
It's on public safety across the board.
But it sounds like McNeil's saying there's something already implemented that they were adjusting. Is that right, Kathy?
Say that again, I don't quite.
If I understood right, McNeil was saying there was something that OSHA has already implemented and they're having to adapt their class for.
They're getting ready because they think these are gonna be passing. What OSHA is talking about, they said, he was asking me, how are the new rules down there affecting us? And I tried to explain to him, like I said, we're not constricted by OSHA.
Georgia's
there's-
not OSHA state.
Yeah.
But they do use them as a guideline.
Yeah.
It becomes a standard.
Right,
It,
so,
two things, it may become a standard on case law, and the state may adopt some of those standards, so that's something we need to watch, no doubt.
so they're updating the program, updating our slides and everything that we're gonna teach by, should conform to all of this.
You just don't want to be the one that they use to establish the case law with. EMS funding update, I'm actually going to leave that until new business, I think, and just go cover that all at one time. Is that fair? Okay. And also, if we don't do it, I hope to do it, but Terry and I've had some conversations about some of this that we just went through about the training that we'll wrap into number 5 under old business, so we'll talk about that. Any other questions on the standing agenda items? Let's jump down to old business. Lee, you got a report from your group?
I do. Y'all got slides for that? I can't remember if y'all did or not. I
There's
thought
the
it was
Excel
one or-
sheet that
You
was
want to
distributed.
throw that up there?
Yeah,
Thought there was one on there.
we share.
So while she's waiting to pull that up, we worked over the last couple of months working on the count for the peak. And we believe that we've got that as accurate. We believe there's a good understanding out there across the state and the regions now for what we're trying to do. We saw numbers, I guess, more normalized to what we're looking at. Then the discussion, are y'all trying to find it, or it's okay if you can't find it? Okay. There are really not a lot of services anymore that are in question. At one point, there was a handful, a couple of dozen or so, but those have been vetted out or corrected. And so one of the things the group talked about was going forward, when you look at that spreadsheet, and one of the things I wanted to show on it was not to point out anybody in particular, but just to see we're buying a lot of routine supplies now, it looks like. So one of the discussions we had as a group, that the group leaned towards liking to look at a different model, was to fund things that made a difference actually in trauma and related to that. So discussion was held, and we actually sent it, as my understanding that Liz took it to the medical directors group, was to look and see, is there anything out there that's truly proven, that's new on the horizon, that improves trauma care pre-hospital, that we may need to look at. We've seen things come and go because they were shiny. These were things that were actually had white papers or something that's out there that for potential for trauma care. So, whichever of y'all is controlling it, will y'all slide it over just so that you can see the equipment that was purchased and just let them read some of it. So a lot of things are directly related to trauma care, like you can see there, IO needles.
Has this been set out?
Yeah, that was in the minute, or the packet that went out this week. So if you look, there's, stair chairs, then you look up, and I'm not picking on any agency, matter of fact, you can't see the agency names right now, but you've got laryngoscope batteries, okay? Y'all scroll up, down, or whichever way it goes. So again, not picking on the agency, you can't see any names. Here's backboard straps, IV catheters, glucose temp strips. Okay, those are just routine supplies. So right now, there's nothing wrong with that. It's in the equipment list as the state or the bigger list that we've added to. So all of that is technically correct. So the group just had a discussion about, should we narrow it down to trauma-related equipment, or should we try to raise the bar like we did a couple of years ago? Y'all gonna have to help me. We did SPO2, is that right?
Yes.
For a couple of services, because they were 911 services that didn't have it, and we earmarked it for that, if y'all remember. And everybody on the committees here, basically, if y'all wanna jump in anything that we talked about that I didn't cover.
Well,
I think we feel very.
the term to use is try to like maybe consider removing things that are expendable that you're, Band-Aids and things that you're gonna buy anyway, and try to put this money towards the bigger items. And if you already got the bigger items, then maybe you'd be able to go ahead and spend some money on some of the other stuff.
So we're waiting to hear back from the medical directors. Either one of y'all ladies know, I know that, Liz was primarily the point with them. Do y'all know, is there anything back from them? I don't think they met, have they?
No, they're meeting, in May, and I think
Okay.
she reached out to Dr. Kaufman to get some ideas, but he hasn't, I think, been responsive.
Or do you have a frown on your face?
Well, and we've had this discussion before, and I'm certainly not disagreeing with the point that time mandates is not what the intent is. However, I will tell you that grants to hospitals buy routine supplies all day long. And quite frankly, I don't think there's a way to track. I think we would agree much better.
Well, that's the whole point of maybe coming up with something that we require agencies to have, and if they've already got it, then they can spend the money on whatever they want. But at least we're raising the bar across the state when it comes to trauma care.
How would you know they have?
That's what I asked.
Well,
Sign
because
an
when you
affidavit.
sign that affidavit, you're
Yeah.
verifying. If it comes up that you don't, you lied, then you risk being excluded from any future grants.
Right.
If you're willing to take that risk.
Well, I think the good example that we talked about was like IV fluid warmers.
Right.
Those are probably $600-700 now. And, if somebody gets that, they don't have that in their service, they should, work on getting that, because that's definitely something that can affect the patient during trauma care.
And I think that's a great example. I think every ambulance instead of George's 911
Absolutely.
truck ought to have a fluid warmer.
Yes, sir.
And people say, well, it's in the summertime, I don't need it. Oh, yeah, hell you do, because back in the ambulance it's 65 damn degrees, so you won't sweat while your patient dies. You
That's
just
an
don't.
ambulance 65 in the summertime. Where's that?
No, I know.
You may be right there. I may have exaggerated that to 12 degrees.
It's set to 65.
That's what it said on. If you drive 4 hours to a trauma center, it might get 70. But I think that's a great example, but I think we need to have those examples, in putting that out there. And I think there's other things, but then it's gonna depend a little bit, it may be dependent somewhat on where the service is. And maybe, I really can't imagine somebody, I can't, and I could be wrong, I was wrong about other things, but I'm thinking about an ambulance service with a level 1 center in their community. Do they need any kind of blood products? And I don't think they do. They got a level 1 center right down the road. They'll be there before the blood products take effect. Physicians may disagree with me.
Courtney, I respect you very much so, sir, but I can tell you, Grady just started caring and talking to Chad Black is making a difference. I mean, even though they got it, and that time of 10 minutes of getting that blood or 15 minutes of getting that blood going, I do think it's important, but I mean, they don't need it as bad as somebody that's in rural Georgia that doesn't have one 4 hours away.
But even there again, we've looked at it in rural Georgia, the economies of scale is absolutely so.
I know.
And being able to make it work and how we do that, and some of that. So, and Grady was not the place I was thinking about because of traffic up there.
Yeah.
You might be 10 minutes
That's
from the
true.
hospital, take you a week to get there. I do get that.
Well, you have extrication issues, and there's any number of things that can create delays.
So I think that's something we need to, between now and the next meeting, do some thinking about. Well, we got a little bit of time with the equipment grant anyway, because we do it in a few weeks. But I think that we ought to, I would love to know, I'd love to know what's out there. Equipment wise, because we don't. I don't have a clue, you know, the service down the road. You know, I've made the comment, made it a leadership thing. What EMS needs is an ISO for EMS. Because they have specific standards on quality of what you do.
Yeah.
And all we have is, you got an ambulance. And on the outside of it, it looks like an ambulance. On the inside of it, damned if you know. And you don't need people to get in the back of it, and on that stretcher, don't have a clue what is there.
I mean, maybe that's something this group, this committee can work with the physicians on establishing something like that.
Well, yeah, I agree that physicians need to be intimately involved, but, I think we need to work maybe through MSAC to require, as we do inspections on ambulances, that, you know, they know it, and I think personally we missed a good opportunity when MSAC, I don't think MSAC was as aggressive as they need to be about raising the bar in the back of ambulances. I think it's 2024, I believe. And we still, a lot of the things that we know save lives still aren't required.
Well, there is, you know, as far as regulation, knowing what's out there, one thing would be, and I guess you're online in the state, and I'm not trying to throw them under the bus, but, you know, we can influence them to you know, tighten up, and add things to that list
Well,
that we're talking about are needed for ambulances. I mean, I'm not speaking of,
is on the list. Yeah.
the warmers on there?
The
Warmers not, no.
No.
That's, no, we just did our inspection, I didn't think it was.
But I mean, I'll pull them out from under the bus. They went on what MSAC recommended. I think MSAC gets a grand opportunity to raise the bar to where it all is. And I think this group could work with MSAC and say, hey, we're gonna raise the bar to require really warmers, but we're gonna fund it.
Yeah.
It won't run 20 years from now, but we will fund it, so the local
Yeah.
government won't be a local.
Absolutely.
So I think that's something.
this before you get to yours.
I thought those, anything else, Mr. Oliver?
That's it.
All right. So can I challenge y'all to come back with a list of those? Assuming that the medical directors, and I won't throw them up under the bus, I'm sorry, this is who I am. I don't know how many of them have ever been in the back of an ambulance.
Well, that was kind of the way we talked about it at the committee level, was that we didn't want toys. We wanted things that had white papers and the signs behind it that made a difference. And because we all talked, and I mean, the group's here, so they can pipe up. We all talked and we named the things that have basically been named today. But we also challenged ourselves and said, okay, what's the next cutting edge? And none of us could think of the next cutting edge. So that's why we thought it'd be good to reach out to the medical directors. If there's a white paper out there that we haven't read or something that
The Eagles conference is coming up in the next few months. Anybody going to that? It's not in my budget.
right.
Or even the military, I mean, I don't.
Well, there are things out there the military has now that are not open to the civilian population. One of them is it's not synthetic blood. I'm drawing a blank.
Freeze-dried plasma?
Freeze-dried
Yeah.
plasma.
Yes, that's supposed to
That's
be coming
exactly
out.
right.
first.
It is.
I thought it was already gonna be
They
out.
use that in Israel every day.
And it's widely available for the military, but civilian population can't purchase it.
And something like that would so dramatically reduce the cost of programs to get it implemented.
Well, I mean,
And
things
maybe
like
that's
the
something we
drug.
need to pursue. I mean, there's nothing that says Georgia can't be the first to do something
It-
like
Well, that's
that.
an
It's my
FDA thing, I
understanding
believe,
that-
at the moment.
Who is it that does what's the company that's supposed to put that out?
Well, the FDA, we looked at it and the last we had was that it wasn't FDA approved and that's why we couldn't.
Yeah.
But the FDA is gonna be doing pilot projects
And that's where we want to get in.
on its use,
Why
right?
not do a pilot
See,
program in
okay,
Georgia?
where did you, see, I think that's an interesting thing to pursue
Mhm.
from the state level, from the trauma commission side, Courtney is, and Terry, is if y'all's influence as the commission for the state could recommend it, because everything I've read about it seems to be very promising. But I haven't read, and I just haven't read it, that they were gonna do civilian trials, basically.
If y'all are okay with it, that's something I can take back to the RTAX. Kyle Gibson with Region Two, obviously they have a really great program, but maybe that's something we can do some research on what the practicality, timeline, how to get involved in kind of a federal pilot like that.
Well, I mean, take back to the RTEX because many of them were integrated within the hospitals and
Right.
trauma centers. About, they go to conferences too.
Mhm.
If there's cutting edge stuff out there that we could help fund with this group that would improve what we do in Georgia. And that would be nice for them to share that information because if you look at all the folks we're talking about, the physicians and all the folks going to these different conferences, there's vendors selling stuff. And that, again, point well taken. We have a tendency to go for the bright, shiny stuff, spend a lot of money on that stuff and find that years later it doesn't work. Although I still have a set of mass trousers.
I mean, we tried polyheme in the state, some other synthetic blood products.
You got them in your trunk,
So-
just in case.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought about this Teleflex. If you want to reach out to them,
I'm happy to.
I mean, I'm probably letting the cat out of the bag, but I'm telling you that it was mine, I was told that it was gonna be released. So how long, ma'am, has it been since you were told that?
I don't know, we just looked at it probably, I'd say in the last year, was when we had looked.
And we were working with our
about
blood
the
bank who could present us with all of that information that we didn't yet have access
I
to.
think they're pretty close on that.
But again, if they're looking to do pilot studies, I mean, it'd go a long way for the
Absolutely.
trauma commission to reach out and say, hey, in Georgia, we would love to be part of the pilot program.
And when the level one centers are supposed to do studies and reach out and,
Yeah.
I think there'd be some folks who'd be very interested in being involved with that.
Nathan Online says that they would be interested in involving their telemedicine program as well, if this is something that we can put together. So I'll loop him in on it as well.
Any questions of Lee or that group? Thank y'all for the work.
Was there something you wanted to do? You started a sentence.
No, I didn't, I finished it, I thought. You just were playing with your phone.
No.
So Scott heard it. Okay. What I'd like for y'all to do is get over the phone or something to start working with these different groups, start making those lists of equipment that might be useful. And even if it's a big ticket item, let's say it's a big ticket item and we agree to fund it for one service as part of a pilot to see if it's worthwhile. I think, what Kathy said a while ago, that one service realized $400,000 worth of savings based on something we spent a few $1,000s for. That's one service. That's the type of thing we take back to the legislature and say, hey, you talk about bang for buck. Years ago, when I was chair of the association, we went to the ACCG trying to get them to help us develop an EBOP class for EMS. And I'll never forget, Ben Petrelli, their insurance guy, he's Courtney, that's a great plan. He said, but I'm gonna tell you something, if we got any money to spend, we're gonna spend it first on law enforcement because they cost us a hell of a lot more money than y'all do. And second on fire because they cost us a hell of a lot more money than y'all do. If we can get them fixed, then we'll talk to y'all. So $400,000 for one community is pretty strong. Anyway, education work group update.
It's gonna be Natalie, she's online.
Hi there. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful, thanks. So I think you guys have the maps in front of you. Let me just introduce myself really quickly. So I'm Natalie Lee. I'm the Deputy GIO for the Geospatial Information Office, and I've had the pleasure of mapping some of your data this year. Among those are the maps that we're seeing on the screen now that depict courses. These maps were created from the rosters of all of the courses that were held in 2022 and 2023. They were created by evaluating and cleaning up those registration rosters, and then we calculated in some cases the distance to a course. So the goal of the maps is to identify patterns. So who's attending the courses, where there might be lowered engagement, where there could be saturation. And I'm very thankful for the working group who sat on calls and asked questions and helped to make the gaps, the maps as intuitive as possible, complete some gaps, and just, generally just to be candid about what was and was not working with them. So Liz, did you want me to walk through each one of the maps?
Liz isn't here.
Oh, that's right.
The committee should have gotten the maps beforehand. Do you guys want her to go through the maps for all the courses?
Yeah. Did anybody got any specific questions about the maps?
Well, I'll look at mine when it
Why
comes in.
don't we take, Natalie, if you don't mind, just take a minute or so. We're not too terrible big a rush. I always get us out late anyway, so I don't want to disappoint them.
Sure. Yeah. So, like I mentioned, that we kind of held to a general template for each one of the maps. So, you'll see if you want to start at the top, I don't know who's driving here. Yeah. So, the bulk of the maps are just showing exactly where participants were. So students, you'll see, are in those blue for these location maps, and then the courses themselves, those locations, are in yellow. One of the things I do want to point out is that we were so grateful to Kathy, who was able to kind of look over our shoulder and make sure that we were calculating things like contact hours correctly and that we weren't missing anything. Sometimes there are nuances with these courses, and what we kind of get is a big database of spreadsheets for each one of the courses held, and registrants are largely on their own and able to kind of fill those forms out as they feel so moved to do. And what happens is that when you're trying to compare courses from multiple locations, we end up with a lot of differences. So there's a lot of kind of cleanup to those. And you'll see some on these maps, there are some notes where, we weren't able to map all the students because the information was incomplete, or where we used their place of employment instead because we didn't have a personal location for them. So just want to draw your attention to that. So auto extrication courses, pretty self-explanatory. I think we can probably move to the next one. So yeah, then axioms of leadership, just one course shown here. Can move to the next one. EMS instructor courses, there are 2. Can keep going. And then we had EMR and EMT courses together. So I wanted to kind of point that out. We did a little bit of manipulation of the registration roster here to make it easier to kind of differentiate between EMR and EMT. So one of the things that you'll see in the note there is that, every student that registered didn't complete the course. I'm obviously not the expert. You guys are the experts on how this kind of works, but my understanding is that sometimes people enroll in the course and realize it's not for them. So you'll see kind of inflated numbers in registration and beginning course, but then they don't finish it. So just wanted to make that note. We can keep going. Yeah, so this is the EMT courses. So again, same note there, but you'll see there's quite a few courses spread across the state. But relatively good participation. The participants are relatively close to a course because of that. Okay, so one of the things that I mentioned was that for some of these, the mapping group decided that it would make sense to do travel time to some of these courses. And what I mentioned before is when you geospatially enable data like this, it becomes much easier to identify where you might have gaps or saturation. So where are you holding courses, and where are your people traveling from? One of the things that was interesting, not necessarily for this particular course, but for all the courses in general, is how far people were coming to take the courses. We had some people, I think that was out in Colorado, that and Kansas that were taking courses in Georgia. So that was interesting. I can probably continue on.
So Natalie,
Yes.
these courses that you're mapping here are the ones that are done by Jimson, funded by us, right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So what you would have with some of the, home addresses or some of the traveling nurses, like coming to the labs, they're working in Georgia, but they're listing their home address.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of interesting
Yeah.
commute.
They're working in Georgia. That's the two stipulations that I put on classes. You either have to live in Georgia or work in Georgia.
Yes. And is it true that there were a couple of cases where they were working in Tennessee? Does that sound right?
Probably because if they're on the border, you've got Puckett EMS.
Yep. So there are a couple of those cases. One thing I wanted to note, I gave you guys two options here, just to make it easier to see, because we are kind of, again, the whole point is are we demonstrating the information in a way that someone who's looking at it can understand? And so in this case, I just changed the EMR and EMT courses for drive time so you could kind of differentiate. I thought that might be helpful. Okay, we can, oh, and I did want to say, we kind of messed around with the travel time. So this is travel time to a course, right? So this is saying how long does it take to drive there? So the dark or the brighter the pigment, the closer you're getting to the course. And sometimes you'll see some gray portions, and it might be difficult to see here or understand why that is, but that just means that it just takes a long time to get around certain parts of the state. So there might be, I think there's a park and there's ponds and there's bridge lines. So just wanted to point that out, that sometimes you'll see some of that in these maps. We can continue on unless there's questions. Okay, so I was really grateful. They were moving the maps, the drive time maps, to where the location maps were. So you're going to kind of see them pop up. Okay, so that's paramedic. So we'll have another chance to see drive time if we go on. One of the other things that you may see occasionally is you'll be counting on the map, and you'll say, well, there's 10 on the map, but I see that she has 11 listed. That's because sometimes you have the same course location that's held two courses. So maybe a course in quarter 2 and quarter 4. So those are both counting as two separate courses, but they'll show as one location on the map. We can continue on. So this is where we kind of wanted to identify where leadership students were enrolling across the state, versus where the course was held. I think in some cases these are an online, like a virtual course, but it's still interesting to kind of see where leadership is coming from. So can continue on. All right, self-explanatory, I think. So this is a busy map. So just really quickly. So I think you guys were talking about these courses a little bit earlier in the call, but this NAEMT courses, we differentiated between the type. So you'll notice that we've got the type by color. So hopefully it's easy for you guys to see where each of those are versus where all the students are calling. But again, it looks like the students are by and large close to the courses that they're taking. Can continue on. So drive time analysis of the same map. Here's our TECC map. One quick note, you might have noticed that in the NAEMT map that there were TECC courses. That is not a mistake. That is actually one of the courses that was listed in there. We can continue on. Thank you. Okay, so this one is very busy. So this is trauma skills lab courses. You can see that we've got people coming from all over the state. And it looks like there may be a cluster of students right there in the center where they're driving quite a ways to get to the course they're taking. We can continue on. I think we might have a drive time map for that. Yep. So you can see that kind of helps you to, like, if you're planning and you're trying to adjust or maybe pivot on locations, this could be helpful for you in the future to kind of identify where you want to hold courses. And then we can continue on to, we just did an overall courses, just threw everything on the map so you could kind of see. All right. And there may be one more. Nope, that's it for me. I did want to ask one question. I talked to Liz about this and Gabriella earlier. Currently, you guys are using, you have a registration process, and then I pull the data out. I do a lot of cleaning together with Kathy, do a lot of cleaning, and then I will do a little bit of data science and do some geocoding of that in our spatial programs that we use to do mapping. We at the GIO host workshops and classes ourselves all the time. And we've had great success with a tool that we have an unlimited license for, Survey 123, and it solves several challenges that we see with data like this. We all have, like, there's always challenges with getting people registered and making sure that they put in the information you need to be able to really analyze what you're offering and see if you are meeting the needs and having the engagement that you want. So it allows us to register users online. It's pretty flexible. It can be used offline, so you can register people on site. That's an option. It also allows us to validate their form entries. So in cases where they're maybe writing on a form or typing something in, it can actually validate and say, did you mean this location, or are you trying to say this location? So we can make sure that their data entry is more consistent. In some cases, I mentioned before, we were unable to map participants because of the data that we got. It also allows us to map students without geocoding. So what I mean by that is that they are putting themselves on the map instead of us performing a process to geocode it, which it's time consuming. And then it allows it to be live. And this is something that moving forward may be useful to you all. This is a suggestion. We can do it the same way that we did it this time next time, but you can, as soon as the data is collected, it's actually available to you in this format. So these maps, you would be able to actually see on the fly where people are registering, and that can be really helpful if you need to pivot on your planning. Or if you need to kind of reinforce your outreach to try to get more people at the table for a particular course. So in terms of cost and in labor, Survey 123 would be significantly less expensive. I did a little bit of, like, back of the napkin calculations of how we did it this time. And on my part, it would significantly decrease the amount of post-processing time and cleanup. And I think you'd be able to trust the data as it comes out, and have more options available to you, again, on the fly. So just putting that out there as a suggestion, and I'd love to hear, I know, there's always questions about changing technology, and I'm sensitive to that. But if you guys had any questions about that, let me know.
Yeah, I would love to see if you could send us a quote on that, or who we should contact for a quote on that.
Sure, absolutely.
Should we buy that, or should that be
No,
bought?
I just let you use it. So there would be no cost involved.
She said
Hey,
she had
Courtney.
So I like that part.
I thought you might.
Hey, Courtney, this is Kim. I've got a quick question for Natalie, or something that Natalie, I'd like to have a conversation with you offline about something, because I want to make sure our process is a little bit different in our registration, because we now already have a two-step process with how we get people into these courses for the majority of, for the NAMT courses. It doesn't apply, of course, for like Farm Medic or those courses that are outside of the NAMT disciplines that we teach. But there is a two-step process between what we use with SurveyMonkey and then the additional registration that has to be done through the NAMT website. So that's something I think that you and I, Kathy, could talk about offline and see if we can maybe streamline that process a little bit, because it really is time consuming when we get to a class of getting all the information from everybody. And they've already gone through that first step with SurveyMonkey on the registration. So we can figure out that, but I think there are ways to make that a little bit more user friendly.
Absolutely. In the chat, I'll give you my direct contact information, but yes, let's talk offline. I'm sure that we can make that a little less painful.
Okay, thank you.
So Courtney, just a question in general. Through all the data that we've got, are we able to disseminate out of all these classes, how many have an EMS license versus a nurse, a doctor, or firefighter that's not anything other than a firefighter? Are we able to determine any of that in these classes?
Courtney, do you want me to address that?
Yeah, if you would.
So right now, we through SurveyMonkey and that initial registration process, not outside of what Natalie's looking at here, we don't have a way, because Kathy and I talked about this yesterday, of actually going back and looking to see, where, the students are coming from. Our goal in the courses that come under our contract that we put on, our goal is to get EMS providers in that course first. However, when we get to a point that we haven't, and again, some of this is working with a lot of those areas to make sure that the information is getting to the providers and not just stopping at the director or assistant director level. But once we get to a point and get close to a course date, and if we still have spaces in there, sometimes if we don't even have enough to actually meet that 12 minimum requirement, we do backfill with other providers, whether that's fire, law enforcement, nursing. But in a lot of these cases where you see ones that are actually primarily fire, they are also still EMS providers. But we don't have it narrowed down to a point where we can say, yes, this person on this roster is a nurse, and that is her role. So we don't have that yet. But the majority of these, again, we're reaching across lines trying to bring everybody together. I understand our focus is for EMS training, and that's what this money is for. But also with the trauma skills labs and the things that we've done there of allowing that networking to take place between in-hospital care providers and pre-hospital, I think that ultimately is going to get us to a point that we're going to have better relationships moving forward as people are training together. It does not need to be the primary focus. But again, if we have opportunities to backfill these classes with those other providers and be able to track that better to know exactly how many we're getting in there, I think that'll be beneficial.
Well, I think the goal of the training is to help EMS care in general. I mean, the firefighters that are there are gaining training that's going to help better care for the patient as if they're functioning, coming off an engine. Right. If it's law enforcement to stop the bleed or apply tourniquets or better understand the human body in a cadaver lab, I think it all comes together. It's a system of care. And granted, I think
for
we need
the
to
patient.
but for the patient. And I think that the goal is, I think we don't want to make sure no EMS people are getting left out for somebody else to go. But I think that we've got that pretty much taken care of, don't we, Kathy, where that's not occurring?
Yeah, as to date, I haven't turned away an EMR, EMT class. We make it happen somehow, some way. I overfill the trauma skills labs, because I know that I'm gonna have about a 5 to 6% no-show list. So I bring them in. I talked to somebody yesterday that the Floyd County lab was closed because we've got 70 people in each session. And I told her, honey, just show up. I'll get you in the class some way. We just don't turn people away.
I can speak for a 4-minute class and all the education class. Those firefighters and those folks who are in those classes, they're providing that stabilization to get to that victim. And, EMS isn't going to be lifting that tractor because most fire departments do the rescue portion of it. So they're gaining that access.
I hate speaking for Lee, but I don't think anybody was questioning letting them in. But it would be good information to know that our efforts impact other disciplines and professions in a positive way.
Could you add a simple question on when they sign up, or I guess the SurveyMonkey or whatever, what their primary career role is?
I can't, right now, a lot of the classes are full, so you're still gonna
Right.
see the old data.
Right.
But, moving forward, I can definitely add it, more of a breakdown.
Because you have people that work in both professions. They may work full-time for the fire department and work part-time for EMS.
True, and I think right now I've got
Or
it,
vice
just pick a single choice, I can open it up to add multiple choices.
Maybe just ask what their primary career role is, whether it be firefighter,
To know for sure.
EMS, whatever, nurse, hospital, whatever.
Okay, any other questions of Natalie? Thank you so much, Natalie.
Good job.
I'm gonna make the recommendation. I don't know what your availability is. I think this would be a nice presentation for the full trauma commission to recognize what we do, because a lot of times a visual of it really helps across the
Yeah,
whole
that, I
state.
think that slide right there is pretty remarkable when you look at where the whole state's, for the most part, being impacted by it.
Crystal, I think you're up.
All right, so this year, one of the deliverables for the RTAC coordinators was to do a regional educational needs assessment. So kind of a snapshot of how these programs are impacting the regions and if there's a need that's yet to be filled. And I think my kind of bias going into it was I was expecting maybe a handful of alphabet classes that we would recommend that get added. And what I saw was vastly different from all of the different needs assessment. All of you have very unique regions, and the requests that we saw out of those were very unique as well. There were people that certainly asked for more access to some of the canned classes that we're doing. But we also saw, I think in half of the regions, access to instructor training to teach those canned classes, support with developing PHTLS and ITLS instructors, things like that. So I have just kind of a quick overview of what I thought were the large recommendations, requests, or needs from each region that I'll cover, if that's okay. All right, so Region 1, they have really great access to a training trailer that has a lot of different trauma equipment in it, and that's spread throughout the region that people can kind of check it out and rotate it around. They feel that they benefit from additional access to those types of materials. Specifically mannequins to include difficult airway, intraosseous needle decompression, things like that. And they also recommended and requested instructor development and additional access to continuing education classes that aren't necessarily canned courses. Another kind of frequent comment across all of the regions was staffing concerns, and it's really difficult to get somebody to attend sometimes a 2-day course. So many people requested single-day courses that seem to be a little bit easier to access for some of the providers. Region 2 has a great simulation program that they use through Northeast Georgia. They feel that they would benefit from increased access to simulation. Of course, that trailer is kind of a big operation to get it to go around the region. And if there was additional access to do simulation training, and of course, that's the ALS skills as well of intubation and needle decompression and all of those things. And then they also would like more impact from their medical directors on participating in these continuing education offerings. And that's something that they hope to use their RTAC to kind of further engage that side. Kyle mentioned specifically they had a great deal of support when they would bring a medical director in to do just kind of sit around the table courses. They've got a simulation mannequin. They can really kind of talk through some case studies. Obviously, those are difficult trainings to put on to get a physician to teach a group of 6 or 8 or 10, but it's something that they've received really good feedback from. Region 3, almost consistently with every survey that response, they requested pediatric trauma courses across the board. They need more, feel like there's not great access to that. Also, an ALS skills training. And then they would like to see some courses, whether they're virtual or in person, with some of kind of the upcoming things that we've discussed today for EMS, blood product administration, potentially ultrasound. That's something that they'd like to be learning more about, and potentially how they can integrate those into their training offerings or into best practice for the trauma patients. Region 4 indicated the need for additional PHTLS and ITLS classes, and then the instructors who can teach those. There was some difficulty, I think, sometimes in having an instructor cadre that's capable of doing, I think some of the grant awards go to a service, and if that service doesn't have 6 instructors to put on the course, that can be kind of a barrier to being successful and putting those classes on. added in the communication of getting 24 people from your service to be able to participate in it. So that was something that was mentioned in their survey. Region 5, Crystal discussed in her responses that they kind of heavily leverage their RTAC right now into kind of the best practice trauma care, but their survey respondents indicated there would be a need for more training on trauma resuscitation, trauma arrest management, and then the ALS skills. I think ALS skills is a consistent one. They also discussed that people wanted more access to mass casualty training and that would be very beneficial in their region. Region 6 also had a pediatric trauma theme, difficult airways, and MCIs. And then at their recent RTAC meeting, many people expressed interest in an advanced burn life support course.
Did they, as they expressed interest, did they listen to what I said about a budget?
I have
Or
not.
did that just kind of blow over their head?
I have not seen a budget come out of that yet. I think that it was understood that they would need to present a budget for those types of courses. And there seemed to be some interest in having hospitals and trauma centers participate in something that doesn't have to be a canned course as well. They can create training around, data-driven. What are they seeing in the region? What are the lapses in care? Things like that. Let's see. Region 8 said that they had great access to the courses. Everyone can benefit from more access to EMT courses, right, with staffing the way it is, and more canned courses like PHTLS. And Region 10, we discussed, everybody wanted access to simulation. There were some in their surveys that indicated the most advanced simulation they had was the old Resusci Annies. Y'all remember those?
Mhm.
Yeah.
What region is this?
This is Region 10. I said so.
Well, they're saying what they have access. I mean, obviously the technical school and some of the larger
Thank you.
providers have it. But some of the rural 1 and 2
I just want
truck
to get him,
services.
just want to get him.
But that's a barrier for them to do in-house training and trauma training is access to those resources. And one of the requests for the RTAC committee was they wanted to create kind of a list of what will be ideal resources and use what Region 1 is using. Put together a trailer, buy a medium fidelity simulator, difficult airway mannequins, things like that that can kind of be checked out around the region. That way, not every service is having to prop up kind of that full program. And then we can use some resources that we have with simulation experts that help us to maintain those mannequins, which is also a barrier for a service buying a $50,000 mannequin as it requires regular preventative maintenance. So that was just some things that they mentioned. And Gabby brought up that I skipped Region 7. I'm sorry about that. They have great access to quality education related to caring for the injured patients, but staffing shortages are often prohibiting them from going and traveling to some of these classes. Of course, y'all know that's a recurring theme. And that hosting these large trainings that requires many in-house participants is a barrier for them to putting on those trainings. So that's what we looked at. I hope that we can do the needs assessment again, and we're going to do consistent surveys across providers, directors, and educators. I think that supporting our educators and putting on some of this training is going to be really beneficial as well. So hopefully that becomes an annual assessment, and certainly those assessments are supporting the efforts of this committee and the Trauma Commission with ensuring that we have great access to EMS education. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Crystal, when you reached out, wasn't that also from the hospital side of things as well, correct?
It was. So we did a couple of different surveys that went out. One was to EMS directors, and it asked questions like, do you, how often are you doing trauma training for your medics? And how do you identify what areas need to be trained on? Things like that. The hospital also got a survey that talked about like the incidence of types of trauma injuries that they're seeing, and then the trends that they're seeing as far as the care that's provided. We asked specifically about, is pain managed adequately? Are skills performed correctly? Things like that. And I think integrating them into this education is going to be really important because we want our trauma centers to assist us. We want that medical involvement from the ERs and from the trauma program. So they got a survey. The educators, I think we need a specific survey for them as well. In talking to the ones, because we did surveys and then interviews with the educators in our region, and many of them wanted to know other ways that we can kind of bypass $100,000 mannequin right, to put on simulation. And we're working on now a presentation for a conference that we have coming up on how you can do cheap simulation.
Yeah.
And there's a number of programs online
Right.
that are free, that you can run from your phone, run a computer screen
Yeah.
just like this, and we can prop up increase the quality of education with some resources that are already available. I think if we just kind of coalesce what we're all doing and create some opportunities for pushing out more education.
Yeah, when I talked with Jay about this, I mean, unfortunately, it was one of the things that Region 4, we were having a hard time with the EMS providers responding to this assessment. So I got with him, and one thing I think that our access to a lot of the stuff that you talked about in the CAM classes, as you can see in the slide, there's a lot of access. So I was trying to think out of the box. What are some things that the trauma centers or hospitals can provide to us? You know, like maybe some, advanced airway dealing with, with blood and airway, doing the salt method with suctioning and intubate at the same time, and or closed head injuries that people at the trauma center have with neurologists come and do for us. And, so, I mean, I don't know if there was anything, the goal from this, do you feel from your assessment so far, do you feel that the availability and access is there, and we just need to tighten it up a little bit?
Well, I think that everybody wants more training, not less.
Yeah.
Finding training that works for the schedules and the staffing concerns, I think that that's going to be the difficult part of it. But I think that what was really clearly identified by the surveys is that we need the regions to help decide what type of classes they're getting. Everybody has different needs, right? Some people felt well served by the CAN classes. Some people need a lot more access to them. So I think that if I had a recommendation based on what we saw, it would be to engage the regions in helping to make those decisions, working with the trauma centers to help make those decisions. So that would be my recommendation out of it. And to continue to do it, because just like with the maps, if we don't ask the questions, if we can't see it, it's really difficult to decide how we can continue to progress the programs. That there's tremendous work with all of the trauma-based education. We need more of it, right? And turnover and all of those things that we've discussed today too, that can become a challenge and a barrier. So, yeah.
So y'all take this back to your regions and encourage them to have that interaction.
Absolutely.
And Crystal and I were listening to the concept of, and I tend to be honest, it's unfortunate at times, but when they were talking about advanced burn life support, I told them, I said, we used to do it a lot.
Yeah.
I said, y'all price yourself out of business.
Yeah.
We couldn't afford it.
I agree.
And they kind of danced around that a little bit. And then, they only have a few instructors, and they have to have their instructors, and then they have to have a course coordinator that comes out of Cincinnati or something.
Right.
And I just, I didn't roll my eyes. I had the intention not to roll my eyes. But in all honesty, they're great people, and it's a great course. It is great training. I've taken it several times. But some of these organizations is $150 to their foundation license per student, just to issue the card.
Yeah, and I took it years ago. I don't remember how many other people that took it. It's a good course, but to me, the training that we get from like the Augusta Burn Center or Grady, just local people coming and teaching, it's not better, and it's free.
I think that's what we need to focus on, is developing that cadre of experts who can come out and do it. And I'm fixed to roll into something that I'm embarrassed about, but it is what it is, that goes along with this. But the stuff that we could figure out how to do online, the didactic will be great help. And speaking of where I'm failing, the March Paul's Rule Initiative, we've got it to the point where we're ready to do the videos. I've got to get the doctors in front of the videos. I've got to get them focused on the slides That's awesome. Great physicians. They are super smart. They give them a lot of time. And what I'm after right at the moment, and quite frankly, we've got a ton of equipment we bought with grant money. We've got high fidelity mannequins. We've got, you name it, we got it. And to the point where the folks from the hospitals have been pushing me back saying, hey, we don't want to carry all this gear and train all this. So now I'm hearing that they want that kind of training. But I'm also hearing from these other folks, what we're interested in doing is making this a class that they take online. They take appropriate exams online to make sure that they retain the information, knowledge base. And then a group of instructors will go out to their hospital so that the hospital, EMS, and the physicians will all be in the class together. And there's not a huge amount of training, but things like IOs, they would train on, because if you go to nursing school, you don't know what an IO is. You get thrown into emergency room and you got a nurse who does, but she doesn't know how to train on it. She doesn't know how to teach it, doesn't have the equipment to teach it anyway. So we're trying to bridge those gaps, and it would have high fidelity equipment. And, you know, I've resisted buying trailers because every time I buy a trailer in Manual County, the rednecks steal the dang thing. I've happened 3 times in Manual County.
Twice in the same trailer.
Same set of lights.
I started to put a sign on the back, if you see this trailer, call the cops. But then I thought maybe one day I would drive. Okay.
We used to, when people would steal some of our equipment and backboards, and it was obvious they had took our name off and put theirs. Instead of seeing them and taking them back, we would just put stolen by. And leave.
Yeah, we had that conversation one day. Richard, you online?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
So the next one is mine and yours. I'm gonna let you go first. And then I'm gonna throw in my 2 cents worth, if that's okay.
That sounds good. Yes, sir, that sounds good. I actually I don't really know exactly what the request was. I did reach out to Liz and they provided us some information. I think Gabby may have that. We got it last Friday because I didn't think I was going to be able to attend the meeting. And so found out at the last minute I would be able to be virtual. And so I reached out to Liz and they gave us some information and we spent the last couple of days compiling it. So I think they may have it where they can show, kind of start the conversation there. But I'll talk more broadly about it, Courtney. I know that some of what we had talked about was the pass rate for Georgia's programs. And, you know, we've got GDAC. We've shown GDAC considerable amounts, talked about our high-performing programs, the ranking of high through low. I think what your interest was, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, I think some of what your interest was maybe helping out, providing some remediation for those students who haven't been successful taking a course, and maybe some support with us along with figuring out what we can do to impact the low-performing programs. And so in terms of the remediation, we've been providing quite a number of the remediations. Hey, Gabby, it was the email that Heather sent you this morning. The EMR, EMT course data one is the spreadsheet that you'd be looking for. Yes, ma'am. So in terms of the remediations, we have been providing, the office has been providing several of those remediations around the state and have been very successful with those. We give each student a subscription to a testing software and to a National Registry test prep one. It's unknown how long our funding stream for that would last. So that is definitely something that we could use future support on. Anyway, the remediation has been a very successful thing. And then we've got a task force with the consortium, education consortium, that's looking into impacting the low performing programs and how we can support those. We had sent an updated spreadsheet from here. I'll talk about this one. This is Gabby, if you'll go to the far left under the EMR one, we'll start at the EMR level. So it's you can compare these levels to the state's success rate at our various levels across the state. What Liz had sent and asked for was essentially for us to aggregate the Trauma Commission grant funded classes and see sort of how they perform against the state as a whole. And these are some very successful programs. This is good news. You can see that the number of students that completed, and there, of course, there's more work that could be done to get this data a little better looking and some graphs and charts. But essentially what we're looking at here is if you look at this is the EMR level again, remember, and that third cumulative attempt, which is what we report out on GDAC for all of our programs. Remember, on GDAC, we don't display EMR pass rates, but we were asked to provide this data. So there are some programs that are at the 100% level, 89, 88, 73, 71. Those fall into the high performing category. And the graph at the bottom of the screen there that shows the percent ranges and then the corresponding category that they fall in, those are the Georgia peer-to-peer benchmarks that is reported by National Registry. So our EMR average cumulative pass rate for the entire state of Georgia is at 57%, and that's where this metric falls out of at the above, below, and low performing categories there. So of these EMR programs reported, this was FY23 and some of FY's 24 data. Some of those programs in FY24 hadn't finished yet. So there's a couple of things that's interesting about this, and this applies to all programs, not just grant-funded programs. There's obviously some outliers in either direction, right? So if you look at row 9, there was this EMR class had one person that attempted the exam, or excuse me, and passed it. So that gives you, on the first attempt, gave them a 50% pass rate, and then the second one went back and took it on a second or third attempt and passed it. So, I mean, it's a low number that drives the 100%, which doesn't matter. All we're looking at is the actual percentage pass rate of the program. But then if you take column 2, for instance, where you had 11 students that completed the program, and then, you had 5 attrition out of it, and then no one tested the exam. So you got a 0% pass rate. Now, in terms of the aggregation of the data, we're not looking at, because no one passed, but that's some of your outliers there with what you have. And if you'll go on, I won't belabor the point, but if you'll move on to EMT, thank you. So the bulk of the programs in the FY23 and 24 were EMT programs. If you'll slide just a little to the right, Gabby, and show sort of that same column. I'm not sure how to slide to the right on a Google Sheet, if I'm being honest. There we go. All right. So again, you can see sort of the same tabulation, several programs at the 100% level, which is great to see. And then even more at just the high performing category, which is also great to see. Some interesting things that we were looking at when we were putting this together that I think would be interesting to dive into is what seems to be a consistent theme is the programs that, like we've identified before, the programs that have been sort of in business for greater than 3 years, that seems to be the benchmark for when someone sort of becomes successful at education. It's basically because they're figuring things out. But it seems like the programs that are sort of in the education business obviously do better. And those that have been established for about 3 to 4 years are producing most of the high pass rates. Now, that's not always a consistent theme because there's obviously outliers in every direction. If you'll scroll on up towards the top, we'll see some of the other ones. These programs produce a significant number of candidates. And the unfortunate thing is there's a lot of people enrolling into the program, but not a lot exiting and testing registry. Now, I don't know exactly how that information compares with the state as a whole, because we were just asked to look at the GEMSA class, or excuse me, the Trauma Commission funded classes. And we haven't performed a comparative analysis with the rest of the state to see how many people enroll and then versus never complete. But if you'll scroll on, continue scrolling on, you can see, again, if we look at the low performing, that's the ones that we're really interested in finding out more information on and how we can impact those. And, not here really to make a recommendation to this group, but I think one thing that would be interesting is trying to figure out ways that the Trauma Commission could improve the performance of those programs that they fund and sort of, what bang are you getting for your buck? If I were, if you could almost think of this as the Trauma Commission as one huge program, like think of it almost as TCSG as a whole, and all of these programs out here being satellite programs. how do we impact our low performing ones to get them up to the same standard that we expect out of our, out of our average ones, so to speak, if you will. Scroll on up, please. And we'll just see the total number. Here's the concerning ones, obviously, is the outliers. The good part is that you have some 100% programs that really pull the bottom numbers up in the aggregate. And then the unfortunate thing is that you have some of the lower performing that really pull them down. And that's the ones that we really want to impact and try to figure out, what's comparative with a low performing versus a high performing program, and how can we ensure that those needs are being met at those lower levels. And then AMT, similarly, there was a few AMT courses taught. If you'll note on this one, on the AMT one, the colors are wrong. And so we sent an updated one, but I don't think we made it in time. But if you'll just flip the colors around, basically the green should have been on the 71 and the 75. The orange should have been on the 67, and then the yellow one should have been on the others, or actually some should have been at the red level. But ignore the color scale there, and you'll see the percent pass rates on these as well. Another thing that we noticed in looking through this with the significant, there's a fairly significant number, excuse me, of students that never went and tested. But similarly, in terms of remediation, Courtney, there's a fair number of these people that once they go test once or twice, they never go back and test again. And obviously that would be a great thing if we could capture those people shortly after they completed a program and figure out, hey, how can we get you to actually go test? Because I don't have the numbers right in front of me. It's on one of those spreadsheets somewhere, the total number of students that entered a grant-funded class versus those that completed the class versus those that turned that into a license is on there somewhere. And that number is quite staggering at the amount of people that these grant-funded classes are reaching. So that's a good thing. Other than that, I'll stop now. And if there's any questions that I can provide more answers on, I'll be happy to.
Any questions from the group?
That data shared with the committee.
Yeah,
I got it this morning, so I can forward it to
So we'll
everybody.
send it out.
I'm trying to think if there's a way to reach out to the folks that never go back and retest. Maybe by region, to where maybe some of the employers would have programs where they would do, I don't know, some remedial training or something to try to help them get to a second testing.
And I believe that's something that Richard and them have done, is reaching out to all of them to try and figure out. I think there was a survey, right, Richard, about what are your barriers to continuing testing?
Yes, ma'am. We did a survey, and then essentially what we do, it's not on a set schedule right now, but within every 3 months, we're basically emailing all of those candidates and saying, hey, here's an opportunity to go to a remediation. Our current barrier there is that essentially Ryan has devoted a lot of time to this, and so has Tamatha. But it's hard for us to get them out of their region to travel due to budget restrictions. So we do a lot in Region 10 and a lot in Region 4. And Jenny has been doing a test taking strategies course around the state. It's been very successful as well. And then we partner a good bit with Rusty and Trish Hotz down in Region 8 at Albany Tech, and they do a good bit of remediations down there as well. We've asked for programs and agencies to collaborate with us on that and see how we can help them, and we've made some traction there. But essentially, I guess what I'm trying to outline is that we collectively as a state could do more remediations. And right now, the remediation candidates are sort of limited really to the Region 10 area and the Region 4 area. Now we do have and Region 8. We do have a lot that drive around to those, and that's good. But obviously, the closer we can put it to them, the better. And we're currently pursuing 2 different initiatives. One is the test taking strategies that we deliver that to within 2 weeks of a graduation date for as many cohorts in the state of Georgia as we can. It's about a 2 to 4 hour piece that we deliver there. And then our second thing is that we're trying to get the remediations where we sort of offer them to a candidate within 2 weeks of them testing. So 2 to 4 weeks after they graduate, Because obviously, if they graduate from a program and they're unsuccessful or don't at testing or don't feel prepared to go test in the first place, the sooner we could capture them and bolster their confidence and turn them into a workforce product, the better off we are. So, although they're eligible for 2 years out and our remediation is offered to them regardless, as long as they're eligible, which is to say 2 years and hasn't exceeded 6 attempts, we offer it to them. But obviously, the sooner that we could get them, into a remediation to make sure that they were getting the knowledge they needed, the more successful they'd be on the exam, but also the more likely that they would actually go back and retest.
Yeah, my guess would be you probably find a lot of employers that would probably sponsor these folks and maybe offset some of their incurred expense of retesting, regardless of where they have to go to or whatever. I mean, we were paying people hourly to sit in an EMT class. So to sponsor somebody that's already completed the class, they just need to test out. I think you'd have a lot of employers willing to sponsor some of these folks and help support them get their licensure.
You can sponsor them as far as travel to Region 4 or 10 or?
Well, whatever. I mean, it may be that they hire them on to bring them in and do some in-house remedial training with their in-house training to help them get ready for that second or third testing and pay them while, like I said, you already paid them. They're already paying people to go sit and take class. So you've got somebody that's already completed a class. It seemed like a good investment to continue putting money in to try to help them get over that hump and get their license and get a good employee out here.
I think that that's a great investment. What the state's doing to try and fix the learning on the back end, to try and remediate and get them ready for testing and all of that stuff is important. What I think we need to capture is, why were they unsuccessful in the first place? Is that a program issue? Can we support the instructors? Again, we saw instructor support over and over again. Why is it that they weren't successful up front? And can we offer additional resources? The state offer resources that when we kind of prop up these programs that have never taught before, like Richard said, they're not successful until 3 years. Can we provide a level of support in the beginning to help them structure that? Not just us, the state, but like, are there programs to help them develop these courses and curriculums?
And I'm not gonna say I agree with Crystal, because she probably doesn't want to agree with me, but.
Oh, I'd be happy to agree with you, whatever you say, Cory.
Careful. I agree with her. We need to figure out a way to fix it up front. And I'm not against the remediation. A couple of things you said that y'all have provided software, testing equipment, this sort of thing. I think the concept of the test taking is extraordinarily important. I think that ought to be a requirement of our courses. I don't know how to make that happen. I think it ought to be a requirement, even if they have 100% pass rate, and then it will be interesting to see if we can follow data over a period of time to see if that works. But intuitively, I think that it probably would, because a lot of these folks who've taken it have never taken any standardized test.
Right.
It's not these kids that have taken the SAT and this sort of stuff a lot of times. So I would be interested in figuring out how we could support that. If there's software tests that they could take, I know some services have contracts with Platinum and people like that, and I would be interested in looking at that, how we could provide that resource to every instructor that uses that gets our money. That means we pay more money to the classes and do less classes and or put more money into it. I don't know, but I'm very interested in that.
Courtney,
go ahead.
Courtney, if I could echo you there, I do think that would be a tremendous benefit. The price point that we're currently paying for the testing software is pretty low. Now it's a new sort of startup company based in Georgia. So the more data they get, the better prepared they will be in terms of making sure that their question bank is legitimate and that the questions are well vetted. I've looked at the stuff and I feel confident in it. But what I would say though is that if they built the software really nice. In fact, one state uses it. I believe it's Maine. And what their state is a lot more granular at the way that they regulate education. They sort of oversee all of it. And so their state office actually they require this platform. and they can log in and view every student in the state, in their state, including like, so for instance, one thing that the Trauma Commission could do to give itself a bird's eye view is you could outline exactly what exams must be delivered in our grant funded classes, say a trauma module exam, a medical module, a cardiac module, et cetera. And then you could see, hey, we funded Richard, and Richard's cohort did X on the trauma module. Heather's program did X on it. Richard's was 20 percentage points lower than Heather's. What's Richard doing different at trauma than Heather is? And perhaps you could also, impact the program before it got to the graduation date. You could see some trends and, hey, this program isn't performing. Because another thing that we find across the state, the office doesn't have any requirements that anyone even administer an exam in an EMS program. It's understood that all programs are measuring the competency of a student, but it's not a requirement. And so when you have that, you have some people submitting a 10-question paper exam as a final exam. And then you have others that have really robust competency measurement exams. So I do think that something like that would give the Trauma Commission a bird's eye view of its overall, here's what we're funding, here's the programs, and as Crystal mentioned, here's the instructors that need support, but it would allow you to get that information a lot faster. So anyway, that's my comment on that, Courtney. I will add this. If you added that requirement to your programs, it would also include the National Registry test prep that comes with that software. So your candidates would also be seeing National Registry style questions, which we can imagine would help them perform better on the exam.
So can you have those folks get in touch with us, and let's look at some pricing? We know how many students we have, but I would certainly, and we'll talk about it at the next meeting when we start talking about dollars and cents. But I would certainly be willing to put that in as part of the project, because I mean, I think it's almost unethical to take somebody all the way through a course when you know that they're not going to be successful. I mean, even the courses are free. It's not like they're leaving with student debt, and they are leaving with some knowledge, but they're not leaving with a tangible license to go out and work, and they're not meeting our needs in our workforce. So if we can fix that, it would be great. And I like the idea of, I'm an old Deming guy. If you can fix the process so that at the end you don't have to rework it, it's a hell of a lot cheaper.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
On the flip side of that, in all the years I've worked in EMS, some of the best EMTs and paramedics we ever had struggled with their EMT test and their paramedic test, but they were some of the best out in the field once they got over it.
Any other questions of Richard? Richard, are you around tomorrow?
I will. Yes, sir. I'm always available. Just give me a text message when you're ready to talk, and I'll call you.
I'll try to call you tomorrow. I want to see if I can get a little bit more information from you and share some more information. But we're running into a time constraint right at the moment. We got a gentleman here who came to do a talk for us, and I'm going to bring him to the front.
Thank you, Courtney. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Richard. So you're going to have to introduce yourself. We have met online, but that's about, I'm Courtney, by the way. I'm not Liz. Nice to meet you.
How about today?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Usman Jamal. I am a proud Georgia Tech grad, a licensed drone pilot, and the founder of Reflex. Before I begin, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to be here at today's Trauma Commission meeting. It's a pleasure to be here. Over the next 15 minutes, I'll be sharing some more about my work with Reflex and potentially discussing how we can work together to bring this technology to Georgia. So a few years ago, I actually lost my grandmother due to long emergency response times. And since then, I'm fixated with understanding the emergency response system and understanding why it took so long for the ambulance to arrive when we needed it most. And so my journey in understanding that process and how the system works led me to founding Reflex. So here's some facts that I came across early on in my research. Every year we have approximately 11.7 million life-threatening 911 calls, for which the maximum response time is around that 10-minute mark. For example, with cardiac arrest, every passing minute is a 10% decrease in survivability. And this extends to all of those 11.7 million life-threatening calls. Considering that the average urban response time is about 8 to 14 minutes, and rural response times are currently hovering around the 22-minute mark, this signifies the need for a solution that can consistently intervene within that critical intervention period. Further, if we are able to scale the solution across the nation, we have the potential to save 150,000 lives and $7 billion in healthcare expenditures every year. So at Reflex, the vision is to essentially build a drone network that revolutionizes the way that critical medical supplies are accessed and delivered. We believe that drones will usher in the next generation of life-saving tools, uninhibited by ground obstacles, delays, or distance between medical supplies and the victim. Through cutting-edge drone technology and unwavering dedication to saving lives, we strive to drastically reduce response times and create a more safer and more secure world for everyone. So at a high level, Reflex is a drone solutions provider that works with and alongside public safety and healthcare providers. We develop, install, and operate the unmanned aerial solutions for our clients. And this means that we work with them through the legal tasks with the FAA, everything up until the training and daily operation support. So this is what drone enhanced response looks like at a high level. Everything before and after the drone response looks very different depending on the operational environment and the use case we're working with. The critical thing to know here is when to dispatch the drone and what we're going to dispatch. Once we dispatch the drone, Reflex can take over and handle the pre-flight and riding the drone and the drone flight. So I put together a short demo video of what this integration could look like within the 911 response system. Let's get that. So essentially, Reflex is solving the problem of delivering critical supplies to a location when it's needed most. What you all see here is not an exhaustive list of use cases. Anything that provides immense value in that critical intervention period and that you can fit under a drone, you can deliver. So some of what we've defined here, some of what we've worked with or have, built out a solution for. In theory. So by now, I hope you all are thinking, gee, this is great. How can we bring this to our regions? Well, there's 4 steps we need to take. Step 1 is evaluating current problems and defining what a good solution looks like. This is really key for step 2. If because that step one will help us define what kind of technologies we need to be implementing. Step two, arguably the most important part of this process, is developing that project plan, defining the procedures, the systems, the technology that we're going to put in place. There's a common saying, you don't rise to the level of your goals, but you fall to the level of your systems, and this is very true for drone systems. So defining those procedures and everything start to finish is going to be really important in that process. Step 3 and 4 then becomes the implementation process of doing the actual implementation and then scaling that to be a sustainable service that we can expand. And so I started started working on Reflex my freshman year in school. I just graduated last year, and Reflex has had the pleasure of working with many great folks and achieving some great things. So this past year, I was recognized with the Alvin M. First Entrepreneurship at Georgia Tech. It's one of the highest institutional awards a student can receive, and I was recognized for my work with Reflex. The year prior to that, we won the People's Choice Award at the largest student entrepreneurship competition in the United States. It's hosted at Georgia Tech every year, the Inventor Prize, broadcasted on TV. So that was an awesome experience. Along the way, we formed industry partnerships. So we partnered with Heart Hero. They are the smallest and lightest AD manufacturer in the world, based out of Denver, Colorado. And then we've had the pleasure of working with Colby County Regional Hospital, defining a blood delivery solution. We'll work with Grand Canyon National Park and Panama City Beach EMS. So this is some of the team that's helping Reflex achieve its mission. Gary O'Neill is our aviation and drone advisor. He is a senior aerospace and defense specialist at GTRI. He's also a former Navy helicopter pilot, so his extensive knowledge in aviation has been crucial to defining this unmanned solution and making headways in this industry. Rahul Saxena, startup and business advisor, is a serial entrepreneur and venture capitalist. So his knowledge in the business ecosystem has been crucial here. And Dr. Andrew Cordes, a board certified spine surgeon on Colquitt Regional Medical Center. He's also a former CIA agent, and so his interdisciplinary background has been crucial in combining the unmanned solutions in this healthcare space. So these are just some of the folks that are working on Reflex and helping bring this technology here. So I hope I was able to give you all a glimpse into what the future of emergency services and healthcare looks like. My contact is up here on the board. If you're interested in bringing this technology to your regions and helping put Georgia at the forefront of innovation in the country and across the world, please do reach out. I don't know if we have time for questions, but I can stick around after the meeting to take them as well.
We'll take a few minutes for questions because it's kind of interesting. I got a couple of questions. Sure. So in your video, you went right to the guy.
Sure.
How did it, is that phone data that's being transmitted to 911?
Correct.
Your dispatch somehow?
Correct.
So then you program that into the drone that then gets that coordinate.
Correct. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the solution called Rapid SOS. So we're working with them to be able to take the data that they get for location and be able to route that into our drone system. And so we can just take the coordinates that they give us and route the drone to that location. Any other questions?
So drone technologies get pretty sophisticated. You see when they put patients in? No, it's called a drone.
So are y'all doing anything on college campus?
The drones crash as much as medical helicopters.
They do crash, but they don't cause as much damage as helicopters. Yeah. but to answer your question, we haven't implemented anything at Georgia Tech. You saw that we've done some case studies at Colquitt County Regional Center, Grand Canyon National Park, and Panama City Beach. We only were able to do kind of demonstrations out there. We're currently working with Cobb County and the Metro Atlanta area to work on their pilot program. So we haven't integrated anything kind of start to end, just done demos and feasibility studies on how this would work. But yeah.
So what kind of costs do you think?
What kind of?
Yeah, what kind of costs would something like this look at?
Yeah, so we'll go back to the use cases slide. So we're talking about emergency response. Responding to cardiac arrest with the defibrillator would be kind of one of the bigger use cases. Naloxone for overdosing, also very big. With Grand Canyon National Park, we looked at delivering saline kits, tourniquets, radios, really anything that provides the bystander that's on the scene to start that first response process. And that's what we can deliver.
He said the cost, like price.
Yeah.
Cost to provide that service. Yeah, so if you were gonna deliver AEDs in Moultrie or Grand Canyon, I mean, what would that cost?
Yeah, so it depends on the operational environment, because that will just dictate what kind of drone you use. So for the blood delivery use case, you're looking at, in Moultrie, we're looking at long distance drones, and those drones do cost upwards of $200,000. But when you're talking about doing something kind of inner city, or talking about working at Cobb County, those drones are about around the $50,000 mark. That's just cost of the drone. What we do is kind of provide that as a service. So we're providing the pilots and the maintenance to be able to support that system. So when you put all that together, you have an implementation cost, a hardware cost, and the cost to hire the pilots and train them. So I can't give you a round number, but there's a couple variables that come into play. And if you're interested in exploring this further, I could price out something in your region and to help give you a better understanding of that.
So it's the concept to where like an agency or county wanted this service, and they would be the one, it would fly from their headquarters or whatever to go deliver this stuff? Is that the concept?
Not necessarily the headquarters, but what we do.
Our location somewhere.
Yeah,
in the
what
county.
we do is we take a look at the data of your historical 911 calls, look at where you have kind of those hotspots. We'll place a drone station there in those areas, and then we can dispatch the drones there. We can also, those drone stations are not permanent, so we can move them around as the demographics of your area changes.
That's
pretty cool.
Seems like a regional
The
project.
actual, so the naloxone, where is that kept? It's kept with the drone, or like blood, because there are very specific parameters on how you maintain blood. So
Right.
where the actual product's kept at the station, at the hub.
Right, so we do have a drone, or we have partners that have a drone station that that's able to autonomously swap out the payloads. So for blood, that will look a little bit different because we don't have the capacity to store blood, but for naloxone or defibrillator, depending on the call that comes in, it can load the drone and the drone can take contact.
And then who maintains, like if it's a defibrillator, so who maintains the quality assurance for that piece of equipment? Like does the county own that, or who?
Yeah, so reflex, it comes down to kind of what we decide to implement. We can take care of that if we're bringing in Heart Hero AEDs, or if the county's providing the supplies, then the county would be responsible for that. I think it just depends on kind of the implementation pathway we take to do the quality assurance on the supplies.
So in an ongoing environment, you can give an example of what the drones cost. So those are some fixed costs, but what would be the cost for, the ongoing service of piloting it, manning it, whatever? What would that kind of cost look like?
Sure. So as of right now, the startup costs are going to be pretty high, but give it a few years with regulations laxing for drones, you can do one pilot to many drones. For now, you have to do one pilot per drone solution. The average drone pilots will cost you about anywhere from $25 to $35 an hour. And then you up on training on top of that. Those modules, and that, just like we were mentioning for the EMT training, we've got to go through modules and licensing for that. So that's essentially what the service would come down.
So the $25 to $35 an hour would be a standing cost, or that would be something just when the drone was deployed?
That would be for the drone pilot, and then you'd have your costs for maintaining the drone, with being able to replace batteries. That would all be built into the service, being able to replace motors, anything of that nature. So we'll factor in that maintenance costs into that price we get out to you. If it's easiest to think about it like this, the ambulance model, our business model, is a pretty good one, and one that we try to replicate, just because you all are familiar with that business model. You bring in a company or an EMS company that provides you that ambulance service. We're essentially doing the same thing with drones. You just replace the EMTs with drone pilots and replace the ambulance with drones. That's kind of what that looks like.
Okay, so the cost would be, you're gonna provide the drone service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, at $25, $30 an hour would be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, not just when the drone is deployed.
Correct.
Okay.
Until we can, so the technology exists for us to be able to operate this autonomously from a remote location. Just with current FAA regulations, you've got to have that drone pilot there, or at least maintaining that visual line of sight for now. So until we can until the regulations lax a bit to where we can do this at a scaled and autonomous level, you'll have to factor in those costs per hour for the drones. Yeah. Any other questions?
I think, the meeting in Cordell, where they was talking about the corridor now was 16. I mean, it'd be kind of interesting to see, like when drones going up and down, because that's super rural.
Right.
And then in South Georgia, where it takes ambulance 20, 30 minutes to respond down the interstate to a crash. I mean, I could see it beneficial if you had a system set up where this drone goes and drops a jump kit and bandages and loudspeaker, and they're communicating with whoever decides to stop and render aid.
Have y'all read the 2050 agenda for the future, the EMS agenda? It starts with this scenario. There's a 911 call, the drone is dispatched. It's an EpiPen, like, it's interesting, man.
I could, down the road, which is like in Atlanta, or big festival.
Lake Lanier, I saw the flotation device. That's a good, I think that could be used for that too.
So we've done a demo scenario where on the Chattahoochee, we deliver a flotation device.
Yeah.
And then also at Panama City Beach EMS, being able to deliver a flotation device to distress swimmers.
Because the pilot don't have to be with the drone.
Right.
I mean, that's been proven.
Interesting. I think there's a good place for it soon, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for.
Yeah. Courtney had to step out for just a second, but he said, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you all so
So
much.
thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You are coming.
Gabby, is there anything else we need to cover?
Questions about the date, so.
Yeah, I'll be there.
10:30 is when
But I'll
our.
probably take a pot, like go to the bathroom and stuff.
Why don't we take a 5-minute break, 3 minutes to the restroom? Well, there's Courtney. Courtney, we still need to do the proposals. You want to take a break or?
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured I'm gonna be there.
Sure.
That's the joke now, I mean, it's obviously my dog.
You never know. That may be a stepping stone.
All ready?
Yes, sir.
So-
Said something, I thought, "Yeah, that's a dog you should tell him, take him back."
So what I want to do now in the next 20 minutes, because I promised to get you out of here by 1 o'clock. So Terry, my driver, he said, I will leave your old gray self up there. So, again, I'm not interested in voting on anything today. I don't want to put us on that timeline. All I want to do is kind of go over some, the big three, and we certainly won't be talking equipment grant. We talked about that a little bit. That's certainly something that we will consider, and you guys are gonna bring us back some information on that. All right, the other big things that we have done in the past is ABLS and education. Okay, now I do want I will be getting with Richard and talking with Crystal about the concept of, could we do this that we're talking about, and can we do it, should we do it? How much coins will it cost us to do it? So we can put it on the plate. We may get a proposal from the Burn Center about doing advanced burn life support classes, something we haven't funded simply, but well, a long time ago we did. And, like I say, they got the hook in, they started wriggling us and we got off. But Crystal brought up something about, could we develop our own using the expertise of that class and just teaching our people what they need to know about burn care. And I think that falls under trauma, so I think that's something we may want to consider. Is that fair? Tim, are you still on? Did you run away from home?
I'm here.
All right, so we're gonna start with your proposal. I think if I can get Gabby to put it up, we're gonna roll through that, but we'll listen to you for a bit.
I'm sorry.
We want to go over your proposal.
Yes, it's there. Okay, you can see it all now.
Tell us what it is.
Yep. So, there's 45,000 there, which is the program fee that covers my cost. And then there's the equipment, 70 units. Based on what our experience has been the last 2 years, it looks like turnover of replacement units that are out of warranty that we need to pay for, and the addition of new units is about 70 units per year. That should be a safe number. And the annual maintenance that we have to pay on approximately 1,000 units, which is what we are paying for through the Trauma Commission that are out there in Georgia. And you see the amounts of money there. 45,000 for me, the 154,000 for the equipment, and then the annual maintenance on them is 170,000. That's the use of the AMM and the annual maintenance for maintaining the equipment, the tech support, and that sort of thing. So that side of it's about $369,000. On the equipment side, there's a possibility we want to do some tests, and in fact, I know in Haversham they're testing some MP70s, and I know a couple of the other agencies are running MP70s instead of MG90s. And MP70s are about $700, $800 a piece, as opposed to $1,500 and $1,600 a piece. And they may meet our needs for almost everybody. And so there's a possibility we could cut that equipment grant amount gradually down. Obviously, we wouldn't want to throw away current units and so on and rush it, but we could, through attrition, we could work that number down to significantly less than that. Plus, there's new technology coming on board that we showed a couple of meetings ago, the XR 85s and XR 90s, but there's also an XR 70, which is about $800, and it runs on the same AMM, and it will continue to exist apparently after the MG90s are shut down. So there's some good news in terms of technology possibilities and more coming available, but that's all in that budget. worst case. Then the airtime down below, we're about 1,277 units running, if we have everything up running 100%. For example, you see the rates there for Verizon and T-Mobile and Southern Link. T-Mobile is $30 as opposed to basically $40 for the others. Verizon is the carrier that covers most of our small rural agencies, that at least the ones that are not on Southern Link, and that's the one that we have the highest amount of downtime with. So currently, it says 435. We have about 370 units that are active there that we're paying for. As they show no usage for 90 days, I suspend them for 90 days. If we haven't got them back online at the end of 90 days, we deactivate them. So our active unit cost is a little lower than that, but to be safe, these are the conservative numbers for airtime, amounting up to $600,000 a year and the total of $971,160. Questions?
I just got one on your presentation a while ago. You had $135,000 still to be expended for this FY. You feel that you'll spend that 135?
No, I don't think we'll spend it all. I don't think we're going to be super close to it.
Okay. Any questions of Tim? Kim, are you still here? Or is Kathy?
Yes, I'm here.
No, I'm talking about Kim. Kim, not Tim.
Kim. Okay, thanks.
All right. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Hey, Courtney, I'm still here.
Okay. Can you see it on the screen?
Yes, sir, I can.
You just run that for us?
Yes, sir, I will. Most everything, there are only a couple of new items in here. You'll notice that the course cost for each one of the programs listed there in the first column, the Intro to Leadership course, again, to do one more of those for the upcoming fiscal year. The next leadership line item, of course, is the year program, 4 modules, one course there, and which we divide this out over 2 fiscal years, the way we have to actually do our invoicing, which really doesn't have anything to do with this. But the pre-hospital and hospital emergency care trauma skills labs, those courses are running about $46,000 right now per course. Our proposal is for 10 of those over the next fiscal year. The NAMT courses, which again, we don't specify which ones those have to be. That could be any of the disciplines that fall under that. All of the ones that we utilize have a trauma component to them. So we're proposing to conduct 25 of those courses. The pharma medic courses, 8 of those. Auto extrication, again, we contract with an outside group to do that, as y'all are all familiar. 4 of those for the next upcoming year. 3 of the Axioms of Leadership course, TECC, 12 of those. EVOC, now that we have that back online, to be able to complete 3 of those in the upcoming fiscal year. The instructor preparedness course for initial credentialing, do 4 of those courses, the same as what we're doing this year. Then the next line item is the public service announcement continuation. And again, there's some revamping of some things in there that we can add to that, but that is the proposal for the upcoming year of that PSA work. EMR, EMT grants, we're proposing 45 of those in the upcoming fiscal year. Patient handling, low angle course, 2 of those. 1 moulage course, which again, these moulage courses, we utilize those instructors that come out of those courses in our other courses that we do across the state, include TECC and pharmamedic and some of the NAMT courses. Then the instructor consortium and development, that is actually what we were kind of a little bit of what Crystal was referring to earlier about those 1-day courses, making that simpler for people that, it's harder to have get in a 16-hour component, and our educators usually are where we see that need a lot more. So that is actually a one-day symposium on trauma trends that we would be conducting there. And then the next line item, I'm sure as all of you have seen from the legislation that has been proposed over the last few years, there's a continuing need for mental health, continuing education. So Kathy and I have been looking into several places for this. There is a mental health first aid component that we've been looking into. We're proposing 5 of those courses over the next year. And then equipment that is our ongoing upkeep for TECC, Pharma Medic, and the cadaver labs, which again, we have to have those updated equipment needs in there to meet the demand for those classes and the number of people that we're actually training through there. We're averaging now, just as one little update, we're averaging somewhere around 160 to 175 people per cadaver lab. So that is that's a hectic day for getting people through there, but it's definitely been worthwhile. The next information that you see is the admin fees that back into all of that, and you see all of it broken down there. And it also lists the per course cost for the NAMT courses and the another one that's listed out on the per course cost that we make sure that the instructors stay within those parameters. And Courtney, I'll be glad to answer any questions that anyone has about it.
All right, any questions? So for the group, you've got Jim's proposal in the stuff that Betty sent out. You got the proposal from Jim that Kim just went over. I will talk with Richard and I try to get up a phone conversation with Crystal and Kathy and Kim and myself and anybody else. I might bring Mitch on board. I'm very interested in finding out how much it would cost for that software package for these classes. And if that means we include that and bump the cost up on the classes, I think that would be money well spent up front. I think anything we can do to support, I appreciate what Richard's doing about trying to identify the poor performing programs and trying to figure out why they're poor performing, and if we can build them up so that they become high performing courses also. Let's face it, there's going to be some that we won't be successful with because there's some folks out there who might not have been called by God to be teachers. They're on their way they're on their way somewhere else and they just got caught up in it. And there's a few of them out there. Anyway, anything else that y'all think of that you would like or someone in your region would like for us to fund, then we need 2 things. One, we need you to send it to the group, everybody that's on the listserv for this package, okay? And 2, you need to send a budget. Don't send me something, Courtney, I think we ought to do this course. There's a delete button on my computer. I will delete that. Because if you're asking me to do more work, I will hit delete. So if you got a course you think is valuable, then do the homework on it and say, hey, this is what I think we ought to spend to do this class or this training. Questions?
What's our total budget for 25?
We don't,
We don't have it yet.
to be determined.
It's not going to be much different, might be a few dollars more,
What was
few
it
dollars less.
current year?
30 or 3.7.
3.7?
Courtney, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Regarding the admin fees for GIMSL. I was made aware that this year there was a change with the way that they're being paid for their admin fee. Where, before they weren't withholding any money till the end, and I've heard something about performance measures based on performance measures, and I just wonder where, first of all, what are these performance measures that they're going to be held to? And what changed from the previous years to why now, even though that might have been in the contract, to why this year they've been withheld that money?
Yeah, I think Kim and Liz have been talking some about that, and it was in the contract. On the Trauma Commission overarching program is a huge thing about accountability. So, for instance, the hospital contracts, they have pay for performance. They have to do this, just get all their money. Pay for performance for doing a class is doing a class. And I think we're probably gonna do a little negotiating about, because to me, and I haven't talked to Liz, but I think my personal belief is when they do the class, and part of the deliverables are that they provide the data on the class, how many students where, demographics for that mapping and all, and they turn that in with the invoice. My personal belief is that that pay for performance is probably met at that point.
Right.
I think going forward with the next contract, that's probably gonna come up. So, and I don't mind scrapping with Liz, we scrap about a lot of stuff.
So
She don't pay me no attention generally, but I don't mind scrapping with her. Huey taught me lessons on how to do it.
So would it be in the next meeting then that we would discuss that further? Is that
No,
what you're saying?
we probably, I mean, I don't mind discussing it, but at the end of the day, that's gonna be pretty much between Liz and the contractor. Cause everybody's contract is different, they put deliverables in there. But I will work with her to try to get to the point where, because at the end of the day, the administrative fee, it covers those things that the contract on a copier. If you're a real good cost accountant, you might could break that out to each class gets X number of minutes. But some things are unknown and cost more to know them than they're worth. So they have an administrative fee. So, but that fee for that class is generally done then. So my personal belief is that we ought to pay for it then.
Right.
But
No, I agree.
Yeah, me too.
And who sets that administration fee?
well, they ask and then we vote.
Okay. So if they wanted to, change or increase or decrease that amount, it comes through them through like a proposal like this?
Just like that proposal there. Now, just like that proposal there, Scott, when we meet next time and we got 3 million, whatever, and we generally will start with this, and this, and then I call it gut cutting.
Right, I know.
I was raised on a farm,
I've been here.
So, but at some point in time, I think, and I haven't done the math, but I think if you add their numbers up, Tim's numbers up, and what we at least have in our mind for equipment grant, it's gonna come to significantly more than that number that Katie just gave us. So then we have to make decisions and try not to shoot each other. Unless this is absolutely necessary, on where we go with spending the money. So. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So-
I felt that, I guess I wasn't aware that was in the contract and they were holding that
I
money.
wasn't either, and I don't think Kim was until it actually.
Right,
they pulled
and I
the
didn't
trigger.
know it's something, what changed to where this year they started enacting that.
Yeah. Again, there's been, from the get-go, when we first started off, and I guess I'm the only one in the room, well, maybe Huey was around, but there was very little accountability in the way we spent money. And Lee's favorite project, the Trauma Transfer Center, that he was so enthralled with. But anyway, over the period of time, particularly since Liz has come on board, there's been more of a tightening up and trying to make sure that we spend our money wisely. And there's accountability for the money, it's like in the old days that we didn't have this level of knowledge you have now about where the classes are being taught. And I think Lee's point, who will be teaching it for, as we move forward, we just get a little finer and finer and finer, and that it gives us more knowledge about how we do the courses and what we put them. I'll be honest with you, I was very proud when I saw the map and the distribution of our training, because I think some people had got into their mind that, well, this is their favorite area, that's their favorite area. But I think the map, it tells the truth, it tells the story. That's why we really like what we've seen in the full trauma commission meeting.
And I can
Courtney.
speak on the Performance-based pay, each of our contractors from our tax to Tim to everybody has performance-based pay.
Physicians, yeah.
Yeah, everybody has performance-based pay, and we can't just leave one contractor out, because what does that say about the accountability we're holding to the other contractors? So everybody.
Oh, I agree, but my question was it just, was there something that changed the decision to make it where this year they're gonna withhold part of their, half their fees till the end of the course?
It's just 4% of there's this 4%.
And
Of the
Courtney,
whole-
can I,
Whole budget.
Really quick, because I got one other thing to say, and Terry's already got his keys out.
yeah, I just want to make one comment to address what Scott was asking about that. Yes, the performance measures were in the contract, and we certainly understand that this year and are abiding by that. Not a problem at all. But one of the things that I wanted to remind everybody about is that what we have done is that we have gone back in every year, and anyone that has requested a class, an EMR class, an NAMT discipline class, we actually have gone back in there and have, as we've had one that didn't either make, we've gone back in and awarded those classes. What happens though is we've gone above and beyond our deliverable on the number of classes that we put out, but we don't get the admin fee on those additional courses that we put out. So we've kind of a little bit shot ourselves in the foot, I guess, up to some extent, but we have made that commitment about getting the training out there. So we feel like that's the right thing to do. And also just for information to put in the back of your hat, we haven't requested an increase in the admin fee in 8 years.
So let me run one other thing by you, and then I'll say adjourn, and y'all won't get to say nothing. Say whatever you want to do. We have been working at another little project that I've talked about and meant to bring it into the meeting. We started off several months ago down at Core Deal, looking at the concept of why we don't get our patients where they need to be quickly, i.e. ambulance services that don't do inter-hospital transfers, even for critical patients. That's not my job. I don't do it. You have to call them. So trauma patients oftentimes lay in ER for hours waiting on them to find a private ambulance company to get in. The first meeting we had with GHA and Office of EMS and Trauma and the helicopter people and some EMS people and a bunch of folks. But the meeting, we agreed to try to figure out what the barriers were. And one of the groups was the GIMSA and the 10 town hall meetings. And Kim has provided me now with 8 different things that they felt impacted our ability to do that. We worked with Mercer, and they have created a survey that we helped with alert wording on, but anyway, they sent the survey out, or Nita Ham sent the survey out. They're compiling the data. We think next week or so, we will have that data from them. And then I'll go back to my old dimming training days, and we'll try to do an Ishikawa's chart or fishbone chart, whatever you want to call it, on cause and effect. So I'm very interested to see what the EMS is saying is problems of getting that done, and what hospitals are saying are problems getting that done. So that, to me, is a huge key in whether people live or die. If they can't get to a trauma center in a timely manner, then it doesn't matter how quickly the ambulance gets there. If they take them to the wrong hospital that may or may not have blood, or even if they do have blood, but they need a bunch of blood and they can't get out of there, then they die there. And that's wrong. We gotta fix it. That's was Senate Bill 515's whole premise. By the way, Chad shot me a text because I talked to him this morning. Senator Hatchett wants to move forward with it, and he wants to be involved, and we will probably have a conference call next week about how he wants that $2.1 million spent.
So Courtney, not to dig down in the weeds, but I don't disagree with you on what you're saying on the trauma patient, the stroke patient, the stent patient. But have you been able to drill down and determine how much is actually transportation related versus placement?
Yeah, that was part of the questions to the rural hospitals. So how much problems do you have getting helicopters or ground ambulances versus how much problem do you have getting a trauma center to accept that patient? And we went through several meetings trying to make sure that the way we asked the question, that we would get a true answer to the question. So that's part of that. I think I've got a link to that survey I can send to you and show you that survey. I think because it was a national survey done by the American College of Surgeons several years ago. And I started with that, and I pulled a bunch of the questions out of that. And Liz has asked to get the response that they found on a national basis to some of those questions, so we could compare Georgia data today to national data about 3 years ago. It's going to do. I don't know that she's found those numbers yet, but we're really interested to see. It is so frustrating to try to find out. I mean, if I order a package from Amazon this afternoon, 8 hours later, I'd go online and find out where that bad boy's at.
Heck, I ordered one the other day and got it in 8 hours.
Yeah.
I was amazed.
Believe it or not, I've had that happen in Swainsville.
It wasn't even 8 hours.
But the bottom line
No,
is.
the drone didn't drop it off, but somebody did.
The
So.
bottom line is, I bet it wasn't $1 million item.
No, it wasn't.
It's
It
probably.
was like a $14 item.
There you go. So you can track a $14 item. We can figure out where that's at. But if you think of your wife's life, you can't figure out where the hell she's at, for how long she's at, if she's bleeding to death. That's embarrassing as hell. But we can't. And we've tried for how many years? I mean, that's, back when Ernie Doss was up there, he was promising us he would get we call it time to definitive care. If it goes from one hospital, it goes from the city to a hospital, a trauma center, yeah, that's easy. We do that.
We know the biggest driver right now. Personnel.
I think in the EMS section, personnel and training were two of the biggest. I agree with that. But other than saying that, Huey, I don't want to go too far out on a limb, because I don't want to taint the data, so to speak.
No, I
my
agree.
perceptions. But
all the companies that do most of your interfacility stuff that's not, government-based providers, those that are doing 911 contracts, because of the shortages, they've had to reel back staffing interfacility vehicles just to cover their, like everybody else.
I was talking to a large private provider who, I won't mention his name, but he works for him. So y'all figured out he may still be online, and he was telling me that he had canceled some of his non-emergent contracts because his main focus was 911, right? Being able to do that. So what does that do? That's a ripple effect downstream. And you see when folks do that in rural areas, and some of those rural trucks end up going to Macon and making transfers for somebody who can't, perhaps. So it is a trickle down effect, or a ripple effect, domino effect, whatever particular term you want to choose.
We also see patients going further too.
Yes.
Than they used to.
Yeah.
Whether it's for acute care or rehab
And
care.
a lot of our hospitals are hiring medics because of their shortages.
Which compounds the issue.
And they hire the ones.
So you get the
want
phone
to keep.
call, that was taking you so long, we've been waiting 2 hours. Oh, by the way, we hired 4 of your medics yesterday.
Well, that was Scott, I can't call his last name, that runs Speedy. He pointed out very quickly in that governor's thing we were working on. He said, we thought we were pretty slick. We hired a bunch of medics to work in our ER. And we thought, well, dang, that helped us out. We're good. Then all of a sudden we realized we couldn't get our patients out because the medics were working in the ER, not on the trucks. And then we kind of worked that out, and then still couldn't get our patients out. We couldn't figure that out. We gave a raise to get more nurses in, so we wouldn't have to hire so many medics. Where did the nurses come? They came from the nursing homes, for God's sakes, and now they can't staff it. They can't take the patient. So it comes around. It's a big circle. It really is. But it's not just our industry.
Right.
Yes,
Yes, we'll say
any
it's,
industry.
it's everywhere. It's all intertwined.
Coordinator, or with that y'all got going on, are y'all still looking at doing something in Region 8? With what you're talking about?
As far as my support would be for Region 8. Okay, and so here's the deal. We're doing a project in Region 2, the armband project. And what we're finding out in Region 2, They do it pretty dang well. There's very few inter-hospital transfers for trauma, because it's a relatively small region. And so what do? If they got critical trauma, they take it Northeast Georgia. So we're trying to find out that lag time from the rural hospital to the other one. There's so few of them that it's not. So I'm from Bubbaland, so I can call it Bubbaland. That's where our problem is.
If y'all do anything, can I be on with that? I'd like to be, some of that.
I would be great with it, but I'm not pulling the string, but I'll certainly try to pull you in.
Okay.
So it's not my dog, so I don't get to pet it.
Thank you.
All in favor of adjourning, y'all go home. And thank y'all so much for your patience. Thank y'all for coming and enjoyed your presentation. Gabby, Katie,